Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in part 2 of What If Sonic and his friends were in Remnant. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Trials of the Emerald Forest. Wake up, lazy bum. It's morning. It's morning. It's morning. It's morning. Nora Valkyrie, a teenage girl with orange hair and aqua eyes, exclaimed to her childhood friend, Ren as they awoke for the day of their initiation with the other first years. Nora wore a black sleeveless dress with a white shirt over it and heart-shaped cutout over her breast line, white detached sleeves on both her arms and pink fingerless gloves. She also had a pink skirt with a white layer underneath and white boots with pink laces. Ren, a young man with magenta-colored eyes, black hair, with a single magenta streak on his left side, stood up, already fully dressed in his clothing. He wore a dark green, diagonally buttoned, long-sleeved tailcoat with black and gold trimming, as well as white pants and black shoes. As he prepared for the day, he listened silently to Nora's excited ramblings about their acceptance to Beacon. I can't believe we've been at Beacon for a full 24 hours. Not that I thought we'd get kicked out or anything, I mean you're the perfect student and I'm me. But it's just crazy, you know. We've been friends for so long. What are the odds we'd still be together? Well, not together, not that I'm saying you're not handsome, you are handsome, but that'd just be weird. Right, what was I thinking? But so, I hope that we still end up on the same team together. Ooh, we should come up with some sort of plan, to make sure we end up on the same team together. What if we bribe the headmaster? No, that won't work. He has a school. Her ramblings continued even into the locker room as they collected their gear. I know. We should have some sort of signal. Like a distress signal. Ooh, a secret signal so we can find each other in the forest. Can you imitate a sloth? Nora. Ren finally spoke. Yes, Ren, she asked as he slid his weapons into his sleeves. I don't think sloths make a lot of noise. Ren told her. She paused for a moment. That's why it's perfect. No one will suspect we're working together. Come on, Nora. Let's go. Ren said as they began to leave the locker room. But not together, she continued as they passed by RWBY and Jaune, who were also gathering their equipment from their respective lockers. Wonder what those two are so worked up about. RWBY observed. Oh, who knows? Jaune brushed off. So, you seem awfully chipper this morning. Yep. RWBY grinned excitedly as she pulled out Crescent Rose from her locker. No more awkward small talk or getting to know you stuff. Today, I get to let my sweetheart do the talking. She caressed her beloved weapon. Well, remember RWBY, you're not the only one going through initiation. Jaune told her younger sister. If you wanna grow up, you're gonna have to meet new people and learn how to work together. And no, that imaginary blue hedgehog guy doesn't count. I keep telling you, he's a real guy. Professor Ozpin himself spoke to him. RWBY replied harshly. Okay, whatever you say. Jaune held her hands up defensively, a playfully skeptical smile on her face. And what does meeting new people have to do with fighting, anyway? RWBY continued. And I don't need people to help me grow up. I drink milk. But what about when we form teams? Jaune asked. I don't know. The youngest sister looked away rather shyly. I'll just be on your team or something. Maybe, you should try and be on someone else's team. Jaune brushed her own hair somewhat nervously. My dearest sister Jaune, are you implying that you do not wish to be on the same team as me? RWBY narrowed her silver eyes with a pouty expression. What? No. Of course, I do. The eldest sister quickly replied. I just thought, I don't know, maybe it would help you break out of your shell. What? I don't need to break out of my shell. That's absolutely ridiculous. They both heard Jaune's shout of frustration as he tried to find his assigned locker, looking at the assigned sheet in his hands. There's no way I put my gear in locker 636 yesterday, I would have remembered to count that high. Ooh, why does this have to happen today? He also happened to pass by Weiss, who was gathering her own gear alongside another young woman. She had long red hair tied back in a ponytail, with green eyes. She wore golden and bronze armor similar to that of an Amazonian warrior, complete with a breastplate and thigh-high armored greaves, with black skirt and a red sash tied over it. So Pyrrha, have you given any thought as to whose team you'd like to be on? Weiss asked her. I'm sure everyone must be eager to unite with such a strong individual, such as yourself. I'm not quite sure. Pyrrha answered. I was planning on letting the chips fall where they may. Well, I was thinking that maybe we could be on a team together. Weiss suggested. Well, that sounds grand. Pyrrha smiled. Great. Weiss beamed while also having comically sinister thoughts in her head. This will be perfect. The smartest girl in class combined with the strongest girl in class. Together, we will be unstoppable. I can see it now. We'll be popular. We'll be celebrities. We'll get perfect grades. Nothing will come between us now. Ya know what else is great? Jaune said, literally coming in between them, trying to act like a cool ladies man. Me. Jaune Arc. Nice to meet you. You again? Weiss questioned irritably. Nice to meet you, Jaune. Pyrrha greeted in a friendly manner. Yeah. He seemed to direct his attention toward the Schnee girl. So Weiss, I couldn't help but hear your fondness of me the other day. He flexed his arm, while she simply ran her hand down her face in annoyance. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Don't worry, no need to be embarrassed. Jaune continued. So, been hearing rumors about teams. I was thinking you and me would make a good one. So, what do you say? Actually, I think the students are comprised of 4 students each. Pyrrha said. So. You don't say. He then directed his attention toward Pyrrha. So, hot stuff. Play your cards right, and maybe you could join up with the winning team. Weiss quickly came in between them. Jaune, is it? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? Not in the slightest, Snow Angel. He answered. This is Pyrrha Nikos. Weiss introduced. Hello again. Pyrrha gave a friendly wave. Pyrrha graduated top of her class at Sanctum. Weiss continued. Never heard of it. Jaune shrugged. Weiss scoffed. She's won the Mistral regional tournaments 4 years in a row. A new record. The what? Jaune asked with a raised eyebrow. Weiss, eyelids lowered before shouting. She's on the front of every Pumpkin Pete's Marshmallow Flakes box. She comically waved her arms in frustration. Jaune gasped. That's you. He pointed to Pyrrha in overly dramatic fashion. They only do that for star athletes and cartoon characters. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Pyrrha looked away with a shy smile. Sadly, the cereal isn't very good for you. So, after hearing all of this, do you really think you're in a position to ask her to be on your team? Weiss pointedly asked Jaune, causing him, and even Pyrrha, to look down slightly. I guess not. Sorry. Actually Jaune, I think you'd make a great leader. Pyrrha told him, trying to help raise his spirits, which seemed to work. Oh, stop it. He comically blushed. Seriously, stop it. Weiss said seriously. This kind of behavior should not be encouraged. So, Pyrrha's on board for Team Jaune. He said to Weiss, going back to his cool ladies man facade. Spots are filling up quick. I'm not supposed to do this but, maybe I could pull some strings, find a place for you, what do you say? Alright, that's a bit too close. Weiss had to push him back slightly. Pyrrha, a little help please. Pyrrha sent her spear forward to pin Jaune by his hood to the locker on the other side of the room. I'm sorry, she quickly said to him. Would all first-year students please report to Beacon Cliff for initiation? Again, all first-year students please report to Beacon Cliff for initiation. It was nice meeting you. Pyrrha told Jaune as she retrieved her spear and left the locker room with Weiss. Likewise, he said dejectedly. Having some trouble there, Lady Killer? Yang asked as she and RWBY walked up, the latter offering her hand to help Jaune stand up. I don't understand. My dad said, all women look for is confidence. Jaune said in a defeated moan. Where did I go wrong? Snow Angel, probably wasn't the best start. Yang said as they were among the last to leave the locker room. Come on Jaune, let's go. RWBY told him. Meanwhile, Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy were in their own dorm room that Ozpin had set up for them as they were preparing to head out to the Emerald Forest as well. All in all, this place doesn't seem too bad. Amy said, looking out the window at the entire campus. It's got plenty of dorms, a nice view, a well-opened campus, a cafeteria, a library, pretty much everything you'd see at an Ivy League college. Looks like a mix between Soliana and Spagonia University back home. Except back home, kids aren't trained to fight blood-first monsters. Knuckles said. Still on about that, Knux? Sonic questioned. Look, We all get it and we don't like it either, but at least this way, people are getting the training needed so they can fight and win. Plus, Remnant's people even got superpowers for crying out loud. Yeah, I know. Knuckles replied. Like I said, I get it. I understand why they have to do it, and I respect the fact that these kids are also given a choice to become these so-called huntsmen. But that doesn't mean I have to like it. Yeah, I can see why, especially when you consider the monsters they have to fight. Tails said as he looked over all the data on the creatures of Grimm that Ozpin gave them, which he downloaded to his Miles Electric. These Grimm things are real nasty. Beowulfs, Ursa, Sabers, Nevermores, Death Stalkers. Who comes up with these names? Amy questioned rhetorically. I think there's even some kind of three-headed giraffe here. Tails continued. Yeah, those things are definitely messed up. Sonic said. I'm a little more concerned about what Eggman's gonna try to do with them. Knuckles put in. Knowing him, he's already planning on scooping up a bunch and trying to weaponize them. Yeah, combine them with his Badnik army, and we got a real problem. Sonic also expressed concern. That's all the more reason for us to work with Ozpin and these huntsmen to help fight them, right? Amy said. It's also why Ozpin is having us take this test of his with those first-year students, not just to test our abilities, but to see what they're capable of. Sonic, didn't you say you met a girl who got accepted into this school? Tails asked. Yep, her name is RWBY. The blue hedgehog began. Kids got some skill, apparently her uncle trained her. She looked like she was 14 or 15, but she wielded some kind of gun-side hybrid like a pro, and she's pretty fast too. Well, not as fast as me, but still pretty fast. And apparently, Ozpin admitted her 2 years ahead of other students like her, so she seems like a special case. Guess we'll just have to see what these kids can do then. Knuckles said with a slight shrug. We should get going. Ozpin's probably expecting us and it would be rude to keep him waiting. Amy stated. We'll be there in no time. Sonic said as he leapt out the window. Race you guys there. He challenged as he felt cozily before running down the side of the building, with Tails flying after him, Knuckles gliding on his own, and Amy leaping down to use her own speed as well. All the first-year students, including RWBY, Jaune, Weiss, Blake, Jaune, Pyrrha, Nora, and Ren, had all assembled at Beacon Cliff, facing the forest below as Ozpin and Glynda began to give them their instructions for the test. For years, you have trained to become warriors. Ozpin began. And today, your abilities will be evaluated in the Emerald Forest. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard rumors about the assignment of teams. Glynda added. Well, allow us to put an end to your confusion. Each of you will be given teammates today. What? RWBY muttered nervously. These teammates will be with you the rest of your time here at Beacon. Ozpin continued. So, it is in your best interest to be paired with someone with whom you can work well. This only caused RWBY to look even more nervous. That being said, the first person you make eye contact with after landing, will be your partner for the next 4 years. What? RWBY exclaimed. See, I told you. Nora said to Ren. After you've partnered up, make your way to the northern end of the forest. Ozpin explained. You will meet opposition along the way, do not hesitate to destroy everything in your path, or you will die. Now it was Jaune's turn to look nervous as he gulped. You will be monitored and graded for the duration of your initiation, but our instructors will not intervene. You will find an abandoned temple at the end of the path containing several relics. Each pair must choose one and return to the top of the cliff. You will guard that item as well as your standing, and grade you appropriately. Are there any questions? Yeah, sir. Jaune nervously raised his hand, but Ozpin appeared to ignore him. Good. Now, take your positions. He instructed as the students each took some form of position on the individual platforms that they were each standing on. Sir, I've got a question. Jaune still had his hands raised as the platforms began to launch each of the students out one by one, Weiss being the first. So, this landing strategy thing, what is it? You're like, dropping us off or something. No, you will be falling. Ozpin answered as more of the students were launched into the forest. Oh, I see, so, like, did you hand out parachutes for us? Jaune asked as Nora was launched next, followed by Ren. No, you will be using your own landing strategy, Ozpin replied. Yeah. Jaune nodded nervously. Jaune was about to be launched next as she gave her sister a friendly wink, put on a pair of sunglasses, and was launched. RWBY was next with a smirk before she too was launched, leaving only Jaune. So, what exactly is a landing strategy? Jaune screamed as he was launched as well. Ozpin took a sip of his mug before a blue blur appeared before him, which happened to be Sonic as he looked toward the forest and saw all the kids launched into the air. "Ya know, I feel there should be some kind of joke to this. But I'm coming up blank. That's a first for me," Sonic said as the rest of his friends arrived shortly behind him. "Did you just seriously catapult those kids into a Grimm-infested forest?" Knuckles questioned. And before you say anything, he looked to Glynda specifically. "I already know why you gotta train them, world infested with monsters and all that, but why do you have to catapult them?" "Yeah, I gotta agree with Knuckles on this one," Amy added. "Why not just have them climb or slide down on a ramp or something? There are scenarios in which a huntsman or huntress end up falling from great heights, and this is a way for them to practice a landing strategy in which they do not die from said fall," Ozpin explained. "That's oddly specific," Tails commented. "But it's your school and we'll respect how you run it. So, we kinda overheard what you're having those students do for this test, but what about us?" Sonic asked. "I mean, we're not technically students, so. Much like our students, the four of you will enter the Emerald Forest and make your way to the abandoned temple," Ozpin explained. "However, you do not need to guard any relics, as those are our way for assigning the students into teams. Just make your way past the Grimm to the temple and return to the cliff. We will be monitoring you to see how you fight and get a better grasp of your capabilities. You may choose to help the students if you wish. However, just as they must learn to work with others, it is also important for them to handle themselves and not become too dependent on outside parties for help," Glynda added. "As the professor said, you can help them, but it is not required. This test for them is to assess their abilities and teamwork, we are just simply observing what you can do. So, get to the temple and back and smash the Grimm," Sonic summed up. "Nice and simple. And we're probably gonna help the kids anyway. Helping people's kind of our thing. If that is what you wish, just be certain you don't do their work for them," Ozpin said. "Sounds fair," Amy accepted. "Let's get this party started." Sonic zoomed down the cliff and shot into the forest, leaving a blue gust of wind in the path he led. Tails simply flew toward the forest while Knuckles leapt to glide down. Amy pounded her Pico Pico hammer into the ground to propel herself into the air before falling toward the forest. "This should certainly be interesting," Ozpin commented. "Sir, are you sure it is wise for them to take this test alongside our students?" Glynda asked. "While they could be mistaken for faunus, one close look at each of them and they will find that is not the case. They will never have seen anything like them." "True, but given what they've told us of this Dr. Eggman and the threat he poses to Remnant, Sonic and his companions will likely have to take an active role in this world and work alongside us and our allies. This will help test not only how they are willing to work with us, but how our people are willing to work with beings like them. Of course, you know there will be other consequences," Glynda told him. "Eggman is not our only enemy." Ozpin could only sigh. "Yes, Glynda, I know." After a successful landing, RWBY immediately ran off deeper in the forest with only one thing on her mind. "Gotta find Jaune. Gotta find Jaune. Gotta find Jaune. Jaune. Jaune." RWBY tried calling out for her older half-sister but got no response as she ran further and further into the Emerald Forest. "Oh, this is bad, this is really bad," RWBY thought to herself as she continued to run. "What if I can't find her? What if someone finds her first? There's always Jaune. He's nice, he's funny. I don't think he's very good in a fight though. Oh, what about Blake? So mysterious, so calm, plus she likes books. Well, then again, I'm not sure I'd be able to hold a conversation with her. Okay, who else do I know in this school? There's Jaune, Blake, and..." Her train of thoughts came to an end as she stopped herself from running into the only other person that she met at Beacon so far, Weiss. Both girls stared at each other for a moment, a small and hopeful smile forming on RWBY's face. However, Weiss immediately turned around and walked away without saying a word. "Wait, where are you going?" RWBY questioned, before looking down dejectedly. "We're supposed to be teammates." Weiss pushed past some bushes, hoping to find somebody else that could serve as her partner. But, she happened to glance up at the sounds of struggling to see Jaune hanging by his hood, impaled with Pyrrha's spear to the tree. No doubt she used that to keep him from crashing. He glanced down toward Weiss and waved nervously. Deciding to pick a less embarrassing option, Weiss turned back around to meet up with RWBY. By no means does this make us friends, she told the younger girl as she began to drag her away by her own hood. You came back, RWBY cheered as she was literally dragged away. Hey, wait, come back, Jaune called to them, but they were both out of earshot already. Who's gonna get me down from here? Jaune. He looked down to see none other than Pyrrha looking up to him with crossed arms and a smirk. Do you have any spots left on your team? Very funny. He pouted before smiling slightly. So, a little help here. Hang on, I got you. Both looked up in surprise to see none other than Tails hovering down toward them before grabbing the spear and pulling it out with a yank. Jaune gave a yelp as he fell and landed on his rear. Ow. Jaune and Pyrrha wordlessly looked toward Tails as he brought himself down to the ground before handing the spear to Pyrrha. I'm guessing this is yours. Yes. Thank you. Pyrrha took back her weapon as she absent-mindedly helped Jaune up to his feet. And you are? Name's Tails. The young fox introduced with a friendly smile. Why are you in such a hurry? RWBY asked as Weiss walked on ahead, almost as if she was trying to lose RWBY despite begrudgingly accepting her as her partner. I will not let my mission be delayed because you're too slow. Weiss told her. I swear that if I get a bad grade because of your… RWBY suddenly appeared in front of her, much to Weiss' surprise. What the? I'm not slow, see? RWBY said. You don't have to worry about me. When did Weiss double back to make sure she wasn't seeing things? That really was fast. Weiss, just because I don't exactly know how to deal with people, doesn't mean I don't know how to deal with monsters. RWBY said as she put her arm around her shoulder, trying to act confident and friendly. You're about to see a whole different side of me today, Weiss. And after it's all over, you're gonna be like, wow, that RWBY girl is really, really cool. And I wanna be your friend. She then dashed away, leaving a trail of rose petals which Weiss brushed away from her face, right before she heard the sum of the bushes around her creak and crack. You may be fast, but you still excel at wasting time. Weiss called out but looked concerned when she didn't get a response. RWBY. More bushes were ruffled around her, causing her to look somewhat nervous. RWBY. Weiss found herself completely surrounded by a pack of beowulfs that growled and snarled at her with deadly intent. The one in front of her lashed out with its claws, but she immediately drew her sword, Myrtanaster, and parried the strike, the force sending her skidding back on her feet as the pack surrounded her. Remember your training, Weiss. She thought to herself. Head up, shoulders back, right foot forward, not that forward. Slow your breathing, wait for the right time to strike and, now. She shot herself forward, Myrtanaster pointing forward, ready to attack the Beowulf in front of her. Only for RWBY to suddenly appear in front of her and cut that same Beowulf down with Crescent Rose. Gotcha. Weiss gasped as she stopped herself, slicing Myrtanaster the other direction, sending a trail of flame along the ground to ignite a nearby tree. This alerted RWBY and left her distracted to get sliced by a Beowulf, sending her tumbling into Weiss. Hey, watch it, RWBY exclaimed. Excuse me, Weiss exclaimed back. You attacked out of turn. I could have killed you. You'll have to try a lot harder than that. RWBY muttered as they came back to back, facing the entire back of Grimm as the largest one. The Alpha gave a howl, and the fire from Weiss' accident began to spread around the area. However, before anyone else could make a move, a blue streak shot forward to strike down the nearest Beowulf, before moving toward a second, a third, fourth, and fifth, already taking down half the pack as a certain blue hedgehog appeared in midair after the fifth homing attack. Sonic. RWBY recognized him immediately as he landed on the ground with his trademark smirk. Hey RWBY, hold the reunion one sec. Sonic said as he went on the attack again. He gave a boost to bash through another Beowulf, using his speed to quickly take out all the others one by one, save for the Alpha whom he saved for last. He was about to attack that one, only for a burning tree to land in front of him and stop him in his tracks. He quickly noticed the flames around the area and decided to handle that instead. He ran into, around, and through the flames to stomp them out while also moving with enough speed to keep himself from getting burnt. In a matter of seconds, the flames were already put out before the fire could spread further. Remember kids, only you can prevent forest fires. Sonic cracked as he stood on the log of the fallen tree. RWBY looked with stars in her eyes and a wide smiley, practically squealing at the display while Weiss was rendered speechless. What? Sonic turned around to where he spotted the Alpha Beowulf and found that it was already gone. Must have left. Ah well, pretty sure we'll see it again. He hopped down and met up with the two girls. Hey RWBY. Sonic. Oh, that was so cool. RWBY beamed. You were so fast. Fast like me. And, you just bashed through those Grimm like bam. Pow. Bang. She continued to squeal. Hey, I try. Sonic shrugged before looking toward Weiss. So, see you made a new friend. Who or what are you? The heiress questioned pointedly. I know there are faunus out there that bear more animal-like appearances compared to others, but you are far more animalistic than even they. And what kind of semblance is that lets you just bash your way through a pack of Grimm? You are clearly no ordinary person. And this place is private property of Beacon Academy. I know I didn't see you on the cliff with the other students, so where did you come from? One would think Sonic would be annoyed or intimidated by the interrogation-styled questioning that was just presented to him, but he was neither. If anything, he looked more amused. Okay, in order, my name is Sonic the Hedgehog. No, I'm not a faunus, and I don't have a semblance, that's just my own speed power, and I've used it to beat up a whole bunch of different monsters before, so this is nothing new to me. And I was invited here by Ozpin who's testing me and my friends, but we're not students, we've got a mutual agreement going on. Does that answer all your questions? Weiss simply blinked her wide eyes, not expecting her accusations to be answered so directly and calmly. I believe so. Good. He turned back to RWBY. Didn't expect to see me again, did ya? No I didn't, but I'm glad I did. RWBY beamed before looking confused. But, why are you here if you're not a student? Like I said, Ozpin agreed to let me and my friends join this test thing to see what we can do cause we got an agreement going on. We know you guys gotta get these relics for your team, he said we could help if we wanted, so here I am. I'll explain the rest of the details later. Sonic summed up. Friends. You got friends here? RWBY asked. Are they all like you? Similar but different and unique in their own way. Don't worry, they're all cool and you'll love them. Sonic said before turning back to Weiss. So, what's your name, Snow White? You know mine. Weiss. Weiss Schnee. She replied, having taken in all Sonic said while still having trouble processing most of it. Hold on, you said you don't have a semblance. How is that possible? How else could you move so fast? 'Cause I'm not from Remnant. Sonic answered. Weiss blinked a few times. Pardon me. RWBY gave a slight wincing smile, having already heard some of the basics of his story with Ozpin when they first met. Would you believe us if we told you he was an alien? Meanwhile, Jaune walked through another area of the forest, and yet to find another student. Hello. Is anyone out there? Hello. I'm getting bored here. She heard some bushes ruffle behind her. Is someone there? She walked toward the bushes and pushed them away. RWBY, is that you? Her answer came in the form of a growl from the Ursa right in front of her. Nope, she said, popping the letter P. She quickly rolled out of the way to avoid the claw swipe from the Ursa, getting back on her feet and reading her gauntlet-based weapons, Ember Celica. She then dodged out of the way of a second Ursa that tried to attack her from behind. The first one lunged at her, but Jaune dealt a punch to its gut, Ember Celica firing a shotgun blast to knock it back and away. The second one tried to rush her, but she delivered an uppercut to its jaw, another shotgun blast from the punch to send it flying upward and dealt a kick to knock it back down. You guys wouldn't have happened to see a girl in a red hood, would you? She asked rhetorically as the Ursa roared at her. You could just say, no. She ducked under one claw slice and backflipped to avoid the second with a joking laugh. Geez, you two couldn't hit the broadside of A. Her smile faded as she saw a lock of her own blonde hair fall off, having gotten cut by the Ursa's previous claw slice. With that, all jokes and humor faded from Yang's mind. Her eyes closed and then reopened to reveal they were bright red with rage. You bastards. An explosion erupted around her whole body, her hair lighting on fire as Jaune shot herself forward with her gauntlets, gunning for the closest Ursa, pounding it all over its body with punches and shotgun blasts from Ember Celica. It was sent flying, but she wasn't done with it yet as she propelled herself forward with blasts from her gauntlets to continue her merciless beatdown of that Ursa before delivering a strong enough punch to send it crashing through several trees before it died and melted away. Jaune then turned around to face the second Ursa as it charged at her. "What? You want some too?" However, the Ursa was quickly impaled from behind, causing it to fall over dead. The one who killed it was none other than Blake, who began to retrieve her weapon, Gamble Shroud. "I could have taken him," Jaune said to her, her red eyes turning back to their natural lilac color. Suddenly, 3 Ursa appeared on their right, breaking through several trees to roar and attack the pair. "Looks like you may get your chance," Blake said as she and Jaune readied herself. However, something quick shot past and in between them to strike the first Ursa with enough power to send it crashing into the other two, much to their shock. Knuckles grunted as he saw the Ursa get back up before he went on the attack. He punched the center Ursa in its face to shatter its skull before ducking under the slice of the second to punch it through its right shoulder and completely break off its right arm and delivered another punch through its side to kill it. He then swerved around the claw swipe of the third to punch at its feet and trip it up, sending it tumbling into an uppercut from Knuckles to its jaw, obliterating its head with one strike. Knuckles stood with a satisfied smirk on his face as he saw all 3 of the Ursa bodies fade away, turning around to face the surprised Jaune and Blake, both looking wide-eyed at what just happened. "Hello." The red echidna waved. "Hi," the stupefied Jaune absent-mindedly waved back. "My name is Knuckles, Knuckles the echidna." He introduced himself. "And you two are?" "Blake," the black-haired girl said simply. "Jaune." The blonde also introduced herself in a similar manner. "Nice to meet you," Knuckles said with a friendly smile. "Hey what's an echidna?" Jaune asked Blake. "It's a mammal that is often mistaken for a rodent, even though they are somewhat similar," she explained. "Rodent, like a hedg," Yang's eyes widened before wincing slightly as she looked back toward Knuckles. "Hey, you wouldn't happen to know a blue hedgehog, would you?" That got Knuckles' attention. "You know Sonic?" "No, but my sister does," Jaune said with a groan, running her hand down her face. "And I'm gonna hear so many, I told you so's." Amy Rose walked through the foliage of the forest, her pico at the ready as she looked around for any signs of Grimm, or students that may need some help. Okay, so if I were an evil monster without a soul, where would I be?" She mused to herself, seemingly unaware of something large and dark slithering behind her. However, she merely smirked as the massive black snake-like head of a Grimm known as a King Taijitu lunged at her. But Amy was faster as she quickly struck the pico to its side to knock it down. "Right behind me," Amy smirked gloatingly toward the large snake. "Sorry pal, but I got experience with monsters trying to sneak up on me," she said, unaware of the Taijitu's second white head appearing behind her. "You're gonna have to try harder." The white head lunged toward her, but someone appeared in between them, much to Amy's surprise as she turned around to see Ren holding the open fanged mouth back of the white Taijitu's head with his aura alone. He then gave a flip kick to knock the head back as he pulled out his dual weapons, Storm Flower to fire automatic rounds at it. However, the black head had quickly recovered and tried to lunge at him, but Amy quickly tackled Ren out of the way as they both slid and recovered to face the two-headed snake-like Grimm. "Whoa boy, I should have studied these things more." Amy chastised herself for letting her guard down. "Thanks, by the way." "You're welcome." Ren simply nodded. Though he was surprised by the sudden appearance of a pink anthropomorphic hedgehog, he decided to put that away for the time being to deal with the threat in front of them. "I take the black head, you take the white one," Amy proposed. "Deal." Ren nodded as they charged at the respective heads of the King Taijitu, dividing its attention and making it easier for them. Ren got the attention of the white head by firing Storm Flower at it, while Amy leapt into the air to strike the black head with her pico in its right eye to knock it down. She landed in front of it as it recovered to lunge at her, but Amy quickly slid under the strike to appear behind it and swing her hammer into the left side of its neck. While it was disoriented, Amy climbed onto its body and ran toward its head, where she then proceeded to strike with her hammer multiple times with enough force and speed that the entire head shattered with one final hammer strike. Meanwhile, Ren slid gracefully around the white head as it lunged at him before leaping into the air, wrapping his legs around its neck near the base of the head, where he then brought the blades of his storm flower into both its eyes to blind it before pulling them out to impale its neck, and with a spin of his whole body, quickly decapitated the entire head. Both Amy and Ren observed the remains of the King Taijitu disintegrate into nothingness. "Well, that was fun," Amy commented. "Thanks again for the help." "You're welcome," Ren repeated. "But I actually mistook you for a friend of mine," he said, initially spotting Amy's pink form and hammer from a distance. Though he was ashamed to mistake his childhood friend for her, he was also glad to come to the aid of his stranger in time. "Oh, so, what's this friend of yours like?" Amy's answer came in the form of someone making a poor imitating of an animal's call from the canopy above them. Nora then appeared, hanging upside down from a tree branch with her smile practically glued on her face. "I still don't think that's what a sloth sounds like," Ren told her. "Sloths don't really make any sound," Amy commented. Nora appeared to ignore Amy for a moment before she lightly tapped Ren's nose. Boop. She then leapt down from her spot and turned toward Amy. "Hi there. You got some good moves there, girl." "Aw, thanks." The pink hedgehog smiled. "I'm Amy Rose. What are your names?" "Nice to meet you, Amy. I'm Nora, Nora Valkyrie." She pulled Ren in, wrapping her right arm around him. "And this is my best buddy Lai Ren, but everyone just calls him Ren." "Hello." Ren nodded simply. "Nora Valkyrie and Lai Ren. Those are very nice names." Amy smiled. "Thank you," Ren replied. Nora then gave a dramatic gasp as she saw the Pico Pico. "You've got a hammer too." "Yep. This is my pride and joy, the Pico Pico." Amy held her beloved hammer over her shoulder proudly. "Awesome. I've got this bad girl, Monhild." She showed off her own massive hammer. It's also a hammer, and a grenade launcher. She shifted her weapon to show its secondary configuration. "Wow, that's cool." Amy beamed. "My hammer can't turn into anything, but I like it the way it is." "Hey, since we're both pink and we have hammers, we can be hammer buddies," Nora exclaimed joyously. "No wait, Hammer Harpies. Now that's a cool team name. Hammer Harpies. Yeah, I like the ring of that. Put it there, Hammer Harpy," Amy said as she and Nora clanged their hammers together. Ren couldn't help but shake his head with a slight smile. Though he still would like an answer on this stranger's appearance, he wasn't at all surprised by Nora's attitude, but he was certain she'd also like some answers as well. But given how friendly this, Amy Rose, appeared to be, he had a feeling getting answers wouldn't be that difficult. This will certainly be interesting. Meanwhile, back at the top of the cliff, Professor Ozpin and Glynda continued to observe the progress of the students, as well as Team Sonic, through their scrolls that showed them what was happening in the forest below. "Our last pair has been formed, sir. Nora Valkyrie and Lai Ren," Glynda reported to Ozpin. "And it would seem that Sonic and his companions have chosen to aid the students." "Which speaks for their characters," Ozpin replied. "From what we've heard, the creatures of Grimm, and by extension, Huntsman Academies, do not exist in their world. So I imagine they must feel the need to protect those they perceive as young and inexperienced. While that may be true, I hope they don't intend to carry the students all the way to the end of this exam," Glynda said. "We've expressed to them that the students cannot become dependent on others if they are to grow and be huntsmen. I don't think we have to worry," Ozpin responded. "Based on what we're seeing, Sonic and the others are choosing to work alongside the students as equals, rather than simply handing all the heavy lifting. This shows they are capable of working with others outside their normal company. It is my hope that we are able to establish proper cooperation with them." "Well, this test is not yet over," Glynda said. "There is still much that all of them have to do." The two professors then proceeded to make their way back to the main campus, where Ozpin would be watching them all closely. He needed to see what Sonic and his friends could do, perhaps it could give him and his allies an advantage in the coming conflict. "So, you're an alien?" Jaune asked as he and Pyrrha walked through the Emerald Forest alongside Tails. "Like from another planet. More like another dimension, but yeah if you want to put it simply," Tails said. "I honestly thought that stuff only existed in fiction, but apparently not," Pyrrha commented. "So, Tails, is it? What are you and your friends doing here? You mean here on Remnant or in the Emerald Forest with you during your exam?" Tails asked for clarification. "Both, I suppose," she replied. "Well, My friends and I got zapped here while fighting a dangerous enemy of ours. Tails began to give a brief explanation. We ran into Ozpin and told him our situation, and he felt that us taking a test of our own against the Grimm could allow him to get a better understanding of our own abilities. You mean like your ability to fly? Pyrrha asked. Among other things. Tails answered. How the heck can you even fly if you don't have wings? Jaune questioned. Tails then showed off his dual appendages and began to spin them around to allow himself to hover in the air in front of them. My two tails are more than just for show. By spinning them at a fast rate like this, I'm able to generate a propellant force that allows me to hover. I can also generate a gust of wind that allows me to fly long distances. Jaune looked as if he didn't understand any of that. His tails act something like propellers and fans. Pyrrha summarized as Tails set himself down. Oh, the blonde boy understood that. I imagine that must be a strain on your aura. She said to the young fox. Oh, my friends and I don't have aura. Tails revealed, much to Pyrrha's surprise. You don't have aura. How is that possible? She questioned as Jaune looked a little confused, not exactly following with their conversation. Professor Ozpin already explained to us that everyone on your planet has aura, including animals and plants. Tails told them. But my friends and I aren't from Remnant, and that might be the reason. I suppose that makes sense. Pyrrha seemed to accept it. This would be the first time we've made contact with beings outside of Remnant. Yeah, aura. Jaune said, rubbing the back of his head nervously. Pretty big deal here on Remnant. Both Tails and Pyrrha looked toward him strangely. Well, I mean since everyone has it, it's not that big a deal, heh. Jaune, do you know what aura is? Pyrrha asked with a slight knowing smile. Of course, I do. Jaune bluffed. Do you know what aura is? We literally just had a conversation about it. Tails chimed in. That caused Jaune to look away with a wince. Right. Pyrrha giggled slightly, turning back to Tails. I'm sure Professor Ozpin has already told you this, but aura is the manifestation of our soul. She began as Tails figured out this was also a way to explain it to Jaune and simply continued to listen. It bears our burdens and shields our hearts. With practice, our aura can be our shield, and as it grows, you will manifest a semblance, an ability that is unique to your own soul. So, everyone has a different semblance? Tails asked. For the most part, but there are some cases where people have similar abilities. Pyrrha answered. And there are a select few semblances that are hereditary, but it's incredibly rare. What kind of semblances are there? Tails asked with Jaune following along and listening closely. They come in all kinds of forms. Pyrrha continued. Some are rather basic such as strength enhancement, speed, or even elemental based. And there are those that are more complex, depending on the person. The experiences we live through help to shape not only our identities but also our souls, and by extension, our semblances. Fascinating, Tails listened on. So what kind of semblance do you have? My semblance is polarity. Pyrrha replied. Polar, wah. Jaune didn't quite understand. Magnetism, control over metals. Pyrrha translated. That's amazing. Tails smiled. Thank you. Pyrrha nodded sincerely as they continued along the forest. I wonder, does your semblance allow you control over electromagnetism? Tails asked. Not at the moment. Pyrrha replied. But semblances are capable of evolving, also depending on our own experiences, and manifesting new abilities. For instance, I was only limited to metals that were already magnetic, but practice, I can now control all forms of metal. So, I suppose electromagnetism is not completely off the table, but I wouldn't say it's set in stone either. This is all fascinating. Tails was practically entranced by this discussion. I'd like to know more. I'd be happy to answer whatever questions you may have, though I can't guarantee I have all the answers. Pyrrha said as they continued to walk on. Hey, wait up. Jaune tried to catch up to them. Can maybe you try to explain all this in English, please? Meanwhile, RWBY sat with a bored and annoyed expression on the ground, playing with a leaf, as Weiss tried to find the direction they were supposed to go. It's definitely this way. Weiss walked in one direction before turning around. I mean, this way. It's definitely this way. She then walked back toward RWBY. Alright, it's official, we passed it. Why can't you just admit that you have no idea where we're going? RWBY questioned as she stood up. Because I know exactly where we're going. Weiss tried to defend herself. We're going to the forest temple. RWBY groaned in annoyance. Can't we just wait for Sonic? He said he went out for scouting. Because I'm not going to let some weird alien rodent thing give me directions when I can easily figure it out on my own. Weiss argued. And it's not like you know where we are either. At least I'm not pretending that I know everything. RWBY shot. What is that supposed to mean? Weiss questioned. It means you're a bossy, stuck-up, know-it-all, who can't seem to accept the fact that she might be wrong. RWBY argued. I'm not bossy. Weiss argued back. I'm not stuck up, and I don't know everything. And at least I'm not a child who snuck her way into this school. I didn't sneak into this school. RWBY exclaimed. I didn't even ask to be moved up this far ahead. I'm not a show-off like you. I'm not a show-off. Weiss shouted. Oh right, little Miss Rich Heiress who throws a tantrum whenever something doesn't go her way, isn't a show-off. RWBY said in clear sarcasm. You listen up you little. Knock it off. Sonic suddenly appeared in between them, pushing them apart. What are you guys, 12? She started it. RWBY pointed to Weiss. I did not. Weiss exclaimed. I don't care who started it, I'm finishing it now. Sonic told them. Look, you guys are supposed to be partners, right? Well maybe if you stop arguing with each other and try to find a way to actually work together, you might end up becoming the strongest team in this school, but it's not gonna happen if you're both constantly at each other's throats. He took a moment to let the heat die down as both girls remained silent, having listened to what Sonic had to say. Alright, what do you propose we do then? Weiss asked with crossed arms. Well, you can start by sharing what you can do with each other. Sonic proposed. Your semblances, your weapons, and maybe you can find a way to make them work together. I guess that makes sense, RWBY said, rubbing her arm a bit. Weiss gave a small sigh herself, seeing the logic to it. Very well, then. Okay, RWBY, why don't you start? Sonic offered. Well, my weapon is called Crescent Rose. The younger girl brought out her scythe. It's a customized scythe that can be converted into a high-impact sniper rifle. My semblance is called Petal Burst, it lets me move pretty fast. Not as fast as you, but still pretty fast. She said to Sonic. That's cool. Sonic nodded before turning back to the other girl. Weiss, what do you got? She took out her own weapon. This is Mertenaster. It's a multi-action dust rapier. As you might suspect, it is capable of utilizing dust for various short and long-ranged attacks. Currently, I have fire, ice, lightning, hard light, wind, and gravity dust. As for my semblance, it is known as glyphs. It allows me to conjure glyphs of various abilities such as propulsion, attraction, and I'm even capable of infusing dust into my glyphs for extra fire power. So, you got a lot of options on you, nice. Sonic commented, sounding impressed. Thank you. Weiss nodded with a hint of pride in her voice. Okay, this is a good start. Sonic told them both. What kind of relationship you two have is entirely up to you, but it should be a good one if you want this partnership to be easier to deal with. I'll mostly leave that to you, but you can at least start by finding ways to combine your powers and techniques together to take down the bad guys. I think I can get behind that. RWBY nodded. I do see the logic in it. Even Weiss found it acceptable. So, RWBY offered her hand to shake in a hopeful smile. Weiss sighed before she accepted and shook her hand. We'll start with a professional partnership and see where we go from there. The heiress said. Works for me, RWBY said while also fighting back the urge to give a delighted squeal. Great, now with all that settled, let's get to those ruins. Sonic told them. Wait, you found it? RWBY asked. Yep, it's only about 4 miles here, max. Sonic answered. I'm sorry, only 4 miles. Weiss questioned. You make that sound like it's a walk in the park. Well for me it is. Sonic said. Here, let me show you. He grabbed Weiss and hoisted her up in his right arm, much to her shock. Hey, wait, what are you? She questioned as Sonic also hoisted RWBY up in his left arm, carrying both girls. Hold on. Sonic smirked before zooming away, leaving a blue wind trail as he ran at his usual speeds, zooming through the emerald forest. As he carried them, RWBY squealed with excitement as if she were riding a roller coaster, complete with holding up her arms up as the wind blew in her face, blowing back her hair and hood. While Weiss screamed with terror, holding onto Sonic tightly for fear she'd get flung away from the inertia. It took only about 2 minutes for Sonic to reach the ruins with his passengers before coming to a complete stop and setting the girls down. "See, told ya," he said as Weiss fell flat on her knees, looking rather dizzy while RWBY zoomed up to Sonic's face. "Oh my gods, that was awesome," RWBY ranted excitedly like a little girl. "You moved so fast. Faster than even me. Wait, can I even go that fast? We're both fast. We're fast friends." Sonic chuckled at her excitement, easily taking a liking to this girl. "Fast friends, literally. You're a cool kid, RWBY." RWBY, once again, fought back a squeal of delight. He said I'm cool. He thinks I'm cool. Somebody other than Jaune thinks I'm cool. Weiss pulled herself up, shaking the stars from her vision as she regained her senses, looking toward the ruins and the various relics set up on pedestals. "He got us here so quickly, crossing 4 miles in mere seconds." She glanced back toward the blue hedgehog. "Just how fast is he?" "Well, Weiss," RWBY told her, getting Weiss' attention. "We're here, let's get a relic." Weiss could only nod, deciding to put her curiosity toward Sonic aside for the moment as the test took first priority. She took a close look at each of the relics to find they were 2 sets of different chess pieces, a few white and the others were black. "They're chess pieces," Weiss muttered, trying to think of the significance behind them as she noticed a few empty pedestals. "It would seem we weren't the first ones here. A few relics are missing." "Ah well, can't come in first every time." Sonic shrugged. "Let's pick the horsey," RWBY exclaimed as she grabbed the white knight piece. "Why?" Weiss asked. "Because I love animals," RWBY replied. "Can't go wrong with that." Sonic smirked. Weiss rolled her eyes. "Fine. Sonic." He and the girls turned around to see a certain red echidna gliding toward them, followed by another pair of girls that he had gotten acquainted with. "Hey Knuckles. How ya been?" Sonic greeted as Knuckles landed in front of them. "Oh you know, punched out a bunch of monsters, made some new friends, the usual." Knuckles replied. "Kinda like you, I'm guessing," he said, noticing RWBY and Weiss, while the later used her own speed to shoot herself toward her approaching sister. "Jaune." RWBY appeared in front of her, as well as Blake. "See, I told you." She pointed to Sonic behind her. "He's real. Sonic the Hedgehog is real. I told you so." Okay, I get it. You were right." Jaune held up her hands defensively. "I'm sorry for doubting you and thinking he was imaginary." To be fair, anyone who hadn't seen someone like him before would assume the same thing. Blake commented. "Yeah, so I wasn't out of line or anything," Jaune said. "But you did meet someone like him," RWBY said, gesturing to Knuckles. "Yes, we did." Jaune winced. "Again, I'm sorry. So, you're RWBY's sister." Sonic approached her. I don't see a resemblance. One of you adopted or something." "Or something," Jaune said, not about to get into any familial issues with a person she only just met. "It's Sonic, right?" "Yep, the one and only." Sonic smirked with pride as the group of 6 came together to allow Jaune and Blake to collect their relic, which also happened to be a white knight piece. "And you would be?" Weiss looked towards the red echidna. "Knuckles the echidna, pleasure." He offered his hand to shake, which Weiss seemed to accept. "How many of you are there?" she asked. "Not counting Sonic and I, only 2 others. At least in this forest." Knuckles answered. "Wonder how they're doing." Meanwhile, Tails, Pyrrha, and Jaune had been discussing more about semblances and aura. Well, to be more accurate, the conversation was mostly between Tails and Pyrrha as Jaune couldn't really make heads or tails, no pun intended, of what they were talking about, which Pyrrha kindly translated for him in a more simplified version. She even provided a demonstration for Tails in using her own aura to awaken Jaune's, commenting that he had more than the average person, which did seem to give him something of a confidence boost. Now the trio found themselves before a cave with a series of paintings on the wall just outside the cavern entrance. "Think this is it?" Jaune asked. Tails took notice of the cave paintings, where he easily made out the illustrations to be people with spears fending off a giant scorpion, likely a death stalker Grimm. "I'm not so sure," Tails said, getting their attention. "This painting right here feels like a warning." Maybe," Pyrrha observed as she ran her fingers down it. "Appears to have been painted here a long time ago. Maybe there was a battle here." As they talked, Jaune had used his sword and a rock to create a series of sparks around a stick, igniting it and providing the group with a torch. Well, if this battle happened a long time ago, then we got nothing to worry about now, right? Come on, let's go. He gestured for them to follow him into the cave. Tails and Pyrrha shared concerned glances but followed him, nonetheless. Jaune, even if there's nothing to worry about here, I'm not sure this is it. Pyrrha told him. Jaune gave a sigh. Pyrrha, I made the torch. Could you guys maybe humor me for at least 5 more feet? He then suddenly tripped, causing him to drop the torch into a puddle, extinguishing the flame and surrounding them in darkness. You were saying, Tails told Jaune, causing him to groan slightly at his own clumsiness. Pyrrha then felt the air around them. Do either of you feel that? Yeah, it's warm. Tails also felt it, and I don't think it's natural. Okay, everyone grab hands. Jaune told them as he tried to reach out for any of their hands and managed to grab one. I've got someone. That's me, Pyrrha said. Tails, I've got you. Tails was able to grab Pyrrha's free hand. We should head outside, I don't think we're supposed to be here. Wait, I think I see something. Jaune saw a faint golden light deeper into the cave and made his way closer to it, taking Pyrrha and Tails with him as they were still linked hand to hand. The closer they were to the light, the clearer they could see each other. They found the source of the light. Is this some kind of lantern? Pyrrha asked. I don't think so. Tails shook his head. Maybe some kind of bioluminescence. And if so, then we really should leave. Or it's the relic. Jaune said as he tried to reach and grab it, but it ended up pulling back. Hey, bad relic. He tried to grab it again, but it pulled back once again. Jaune, do you know what bioluminescence is? Pyrrha told him as he still tried to grab it. Some kind of glowing relic. He asked as he tried to grab it again, but Tails quickly pulled him away. No, it's not. Tails told him. Bioluminescence is basically a source of light that comes from the light pulled close enough toward its source, which was revealed to be a giant death stalker. Living creature. A loud high-pitched scream sounded off throughout the entire Emerald Forest, and even got the attention of Sonic, RWBY, Weiss, Knuckles, Young, and Blake. Did anybody else just hear a little girl screaming in terror? Sonic asked. Tails flew out of the cave as fast as he could, carrying Jaune by his arms while Pyrrha held onto Jaune's legs. Less than a second after the three left the cave, a massive death stalker broke through with an angry hiss. It's not the relic. It's not. Jaune screamed as Tails flew them higher and higher into the sky and away from the death stalker's reach. Don't worry. I don't think death stalkers have ranged attacks, so we should be safe up here. Tails said. They don't have ranged attacks. That's good thinking. Pyrrha told him. How can you carry both of us? Jaune still screamed. Trust me, I've got plenty of experience literally carrying my friends. Tails said as he continued to fly them away. But even though the death stalker didn't have any ranged attacks, it was not about to let its prey get away as it scurried after them on the ground. Back at the ruins, the group of 6 heard a series of rocket explosions and pounding sounds, causing them to turn in the direction of the forest where several trees were knocked down to reveal a pair of Ursa, with Nora and Ren riding on one and Amy riding on the other. Yeehaw! Nora cheered as she fired Monhild's grenade launcher form into the back of her Ursa, causing it to explode as she flipped and landed gracefully on her feet while Ren landed face first on the ground. At the same time, Amy pulled back on her Pico and swung it down to dislocate the jaw of the Ursa she rode before leaping down in front of her and spun her hammer around rapidly to trip the Ursa off its feet before sending it up in her tornado hammer move before it fell down into a final upward swing from Amy to finish it off. Hammer harpies. Amy and Nora both cheered as they clung their hammers together again, while Ren struggled to pick himself up. Hey, you okay? Amy asked, helping Ren up on his feet. Yeah, just please, let's never do that again. Ren said, causing Amy to chuckle. Nora. She's already gone. Amy gestured to the ruins where Nora spotted a white rook piece and took it in her hands. I'm queen of the castle. I'm queen of the castle. Nora sung, balancing the white rook on her head. Nora. Ren exclaimed, causing her to stop singing. Coming Ren. She ran back to join her partner, while most of the present group looked somewhat perplexed at what just happened. Did they just ride in on an Ursa? Blake asked. Looks that way. Knuckles commented. Hey Sonic. Amy waved to the blue hedgehog as she ran toward him. I see you made it here alright. Not surprising cause it's you. Yep, see you made some new friends too. Sonic replied, noticing Ren and Nora. Yeah, these people are really fun. Amy stated before turning to the other first years present. I'm Amy Rose, by the way. It's nice to meet you. Wait, your last name is Rose? RWBY asked in surprise before a wide smile formed on her face. That's my last name too. Ruby Rose. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Amy exclaimed as she and RWBY clutched their hands together. We're gonna be total BFFs. I know it. Ooh boy. Sonic massaged his forehead, having a bad feeling about all this. Looks like all we're missing now is incoming. Everyone looked towards the sky where Tails flew in, still carrying Jaune and Pyrrha. They quickly came to the ground where Tails let go, allowing Pyrrha to land on her feet, while Jaune tripped as he landed and fell face first on the ground. That was certainly interesting, I've never flown before. Pyrrha commented. It's a lot of fun, trust me. Tails smiled. Not to me, Jaune groaned, his face still in the dirt before he pushed himself back up. Did that fox just fly? Blake questioned. You know what? That is impossible, Weiss stated. How can you fly if you don't have a semblance or even wings? Those two tails he's got act like helicopter blades. Knuckles gave a brief explanation. Hey Tails, see you made some friends too. Sonic met up with his closest friend. Yeah, but no time for introductions. Tails told him. Spotted a whole bunch of Grimm from the air and they're all coming here. How many are we talking about? Yang asked. All 12 of them heard the sounds of a wolf-like howl as a massive pack of Grimm consisting of Beowulfs, Ursa, Borbatusks, and even several griffins that flew in the air before landing with their brethren. The horde almost encircled the whole area, forming a line that separated Team Sonic and their student allies from the rest of the forest, and the one that appeared to be leading it was the very same alpha Beowulf that Sonic, RWBY, and Weiss had encountered before. About 50 total, at least. Tails answered Yang's question as all the students looked surprised and even a little bit nervous while Knuckles and Amy had serious expressions on their face. Oh hey, the big bad wolf's back. Sonic recognized the alpha Beowulf. Guess he doesn't like unfinished business. Please tell me someone has a plan. Blake noted nervously as she drew Gamble's shroud. Maybe if we all stand together in a defensive, Pyrrha began to suggest, but Sonic held up his hand to stop her. Nah. You guys just stay back, my friends and I got this. What? Are you crazy? Weiss exclaimed. That is over 50 Grimm. We've had worse odds. Knuckles commented as he walked forward along with Tails and Amy to join Sonic. What could be worse than that? Jaune also exclaimed. You don't have to worry about us. Amy said, hoisting the Pico Pico over her shoulder. Your test was just to get those relics and make it back to the start line. Ozpin only had us come here so he could see what we can do, and we plan to show him just that. Leave this to us. Tails added. We got plenty of experience fighting monsters. Are you sure? RWBY asked with concern. Positive. Sonic turned back and gave a thumbs up with his trademark smirk. Just sit back and enjoy the show. Someone's cocky. Yang said. And that says a lot coming from me. Team Sonic walked forward, closer towards the horde of Grimm before the alpha Beowulf howled, sending all his brethren toward the heroes. You guys ready? Let's show 'em how it's done. Sonic said before he went on the attack first, using his spin dash to carve his way through a group of Beowulfs and a couple Ursa, before appearing in the center of a pack, where they leapt at him, but he quickly unleashed his blue tornado attack to send all of them flying and crashing into their brethren. With the Grimm disoriented, the others quickly took advantage as Tails flew toward an Ursa, using his own spin dash with extra cutting power from his tail to decapitate it before spinning his tails outward to generate a propelling force of wind to push back several Grimm. Knuckles came to Tails' front as 3 griffins tried to fly down and claw at him, but Knuckles leapt to the center one and dealt an uppercut to its head and crushed its skull. As he fell, he grabbed that griffin by its talons and used his strength to slam it down into the second to knock it down hard onto the ground. Knuckles landed on his feet and swiftly turned around to punch through the body of the third griffin and sent it crashing into 2 Beowulfs from the force of his punch alone. A Borbitusk rolled towards Amy, but she had her Pico already primed and waited for it to come in close before she swung her hammer like one would do in Crockle to send the rolled-up Grimm slamming into a pack of incoming Beowulfs and Ursa, like a row of bowling pins. She then spun her hammer once again to generate a tornado effect to pull in a pair of Ursa that tried to surround her, but the tornado sent them both flying straight up where Sonic met them with a series of homing attacks to take them out of commission before they even hit the ground. One Borbitusk tried to charge and ram Knuckles, but he ceased and grabbed it by its tusks, digging his feet in to halt the Borbitusk's advance. He used his own strength to easily rip out the tusks, where he jammed one into the neck of the Grimm to kill it before he threw the other at a griffin that flew down toward him, scoring a headshot to kill it as well. As Tails flew around an Ursa to deliver an airborne spin dash to the back of its head, he and Sonic regrouped around Knuckles as they went for a spin dash attack toward him, but Knuckles caught them while they were still rolled up and leapt into the air to throw them into a pack of Grimm. The extra strength provided by Knuckles, combined with the gathered momentum of Sonic and Tails' respective spin dashes, created a powerful enough force that obliterated most of the Grimm on contact, while sending the others crashing into the trees around them. While the three of them mopped up the remainder of the Grimm from the area, Amy found herself face to face with the Alpha Beowulf that lashed out its claws at her, which she parried with her Pico. She quickly dashed and slid under its legs while swinging her hammer at its left leg to trip it up. While it was down, Amy leapt into the air to slam her hammer down onto its back, causing it to roar in pain before jumping into the air again to deliver the final strike to its skull, shattering it and killing the head of the pack. With the Alpha dead, the remainder of the horde fell into confusion and panic, not that it mattered since there were only 6 remaining. Knuckles grabbed one Beowulf by its foot and hauled it up to slam it into the ground before throwing it into a charging Borbitusk, knocking them both down and allowing Knuckles the chance to finish them off with a charge and final thrust of his fist to destroy them. Tails flew up towards a griffin and wrapped his tails around its neck before pulling it toward the ground, where he spun and sent it falling into an Ursa, before ending the pair with a spin dash that tore through both. Finally, Sonic faced 2 remaining Beowulfs, which he was quick to defeat by striking multiple homing attacks. And that's how we do it, Team Sonic style. Sonic grinned as he, Tails, Amy, and Knuckles exchanged a 4-way high-five. The students could only look in shock and amazement, wide and circular eyes with lowered jaws, with John's jaw looking like it was about to fall off completely. Whoa, Yang was rendered speechless. They have every right to be cocky. Ren commented. That was incredible. Pyrrha looked in awe. That was awesome. Nora shouted with a wild and joyous look on her face. That was over 50 Grimm, and they made it look like nothing. Weiss stuttered. They even took down the Alpha so it couldn't escape, impressive. Blake said. Ruby said nothing, but her silver eyes sparkled at their performance, a smile clear on her face. One would expect more of a fangirl-like reaction out of her, and while that was what she was feeling on the inside, the idea of people like this existing, people who fight monsters and have such courageous hearts, this shows that even if they come from different worlds, there are good people in this world and beyond. That thought alone made her very happy. However, all celebrations came to an end as a large caw drew all their attention toward the sky where they saw a Nevermore circling the area around them. Oh hey, another Tweety. Sonic grinned as he and his friends regrouped around the students, who had already drawn their weapons. Guess the party's not over yet. A different kind of roar was heard from the forest as the same Death Stalker that Tails, Jaune, and Pyrrha encountered had broken its way through the trees to hiss at the group. Oh no, not that thing again. Jaune's face paled. It's a Death Stalker, Weiss stated seriously. A little beefier than the one we took down yesterday, Sonic commented. But I'm sure we can. The entire ground suddenly shook, which followed the sounds of large stomps echoing around the forest and a large moan. From the canopy of the trees, they could see a large shape making its way closer to them, breaking down all the trees in its path like they were twigs. It would soon enter the clearing to reveal an enormous elephant-like Grimm that dwarfed even the Death Stalker. Is that an elephant? Knuckles exclaimed while Jaune screamed. A Goliath. Here, Blake shouted. Even Sonic winced, his smile fading as a serious look formed on his face. Okay, that might be a problem. Amy then turned toward the students. You guys get what you need. We'll distract them. What? But we can help you. Yang protested. No, they're right. Weiss pointed out. We didn't come here to fight these Grimm. We were sent here to retrieve the relics and make it back to the cliff, that is all. Yeah, there's no point in fighting where we don't have to. RWBY added. Run and live, that is an idea I can get behind. Jaune said with a relieved smile. More like live to fight another day, but basically yes. Knuckles agreed. But are you guys sure you can handle this? RWBY asked Team Sonic. 50 Beowulf-sized Grimm is one thing, but these guys. Worst case scenario, we'll retreat. Tails said. We got enough experience to know when to fall back if we need to. Yeah, don't worry about us. You guys just worry about passing. Sonic told them before he and his team ran off to get the attention of the 3 large Grimm. Hey Tweety. Dumbo. Mortal Kombat. Over here. This caused the terrible trio of larger Grimm to roar in fury as they chased the fleeing Team Sonic, leaving the students be as Jaune grabbed the white rook piece for him and Pyrrha. With all 4 pairs having retrieved their respective relics and make their way back to the cliff. However, while the Goliath continued to chase Sonic and his friends, the Nevermore caught the sight of the 8 students and gave a caw, which drew the attention of the Death Stalker. Both the flying and scorpion-like Grimm then turned away and went off in a certain direction. Uh-oh, the Death Stalker and Nevermore aren't chasing us anymore. Amy stated as she and her friends continue to flee the pursuing Goliath. They're going after the kids. Knuckles pointed out. I'll go in. No, Knuckles, we stick together. Sonic told him. If one of us splits off, we risk leading super size here to the students and that's a bit above their pay grade. Oh, but a giant bird with razor-sharp feathers and massive scorpion are just fine. Knuckles questioned. They're only kids. They're not only kids, Knuckles. Tails said. We've all seen what they can do. They're young, but they can handle themselves. You're technically younger than they are, Tails. Amy pointed out. But you're right, it's not like they're helpless school kids lost in a forest of monsters. I've seen that at least Nora and Ren know what they're doing. They're trained. Same for RWBY and Weiss. Sonic pointed out. Pretty sure you've seen it too, right Knux? Even Knuckles had to agree. It may have been a short time, but he could tell from his time with Jaune and Blake that they could handle themselves. But a couple of Ursa was a different story than the likes of a Death Stalker and a Nevermore together, but he also had to concede that if they split up to help them, they would also run the risk of bringing the Goliath to them as well, and that would be too much for them. Look, if it gets too much, we'll step in. Sonic said to his echidna friend, noticing his deep thought expression even as they continued to run with the Goliath at their heels. But this is their test, they gotta learn to take care of themselves without becoming too reliant on us. Ozpin had a point in saying that before we entered the forest, remember? You're right, Knuckles admitted reluctantly. I don't like it, but you're right. We'll let them handle those two, but if it gets too out of hand, we are stepping in to help. Of course, Amy nodded. Absolutely. Tails agreed. Well, since we're all on the same page, Sonic smirked as he turned around to run backwards while also facing the Goliath. Come on, Dumbo. This is a chase, not a walk in the park. The Goliath roared in fury as it picked up its pace, motivating Team Sonic to do the same and find a good spot where they can fight this beast on their terms. RWBY, Weiss, Jaune, Pyrrha, Jaune, Blake, Nora, and Ren continued to run as they were getting closer to the cliff from where they started. The only thing separating them was a series of ruins, with a similar structure to an ancient castle, and a vastly deep chasm below. However, Blake noticed a shadow flying overhead. We have company. They all took notice of the Nevermore that flew over them, causing them to split up and take cover amidst the ruins around them as the Nevermore perched itself at the top of the tallest tower as it gave a loud caw, effectively blocking their path. Well, that's great. I thought our new friends were handling it. Jaune recalled. Probably doubled back when it saw us. RWBY assumed. But we can take it. Incoming. Pyrrha exclaimed, alerting the students to the incoming Death Stalker as well. Aw man, run. Jaune exclaimed, leaving the group of 8 with little chance but to push on ahead despite the Nevermore blocking their path. Nora, distract it, Ren told her. She nodded in response as she rolled out of the way of the Nevermore's razor-sharp feathers it sent her way. She quickly drew Monhild and converted it into its grenade launcher to open fire on the giant bird-like Grimm. This seemed to work as the explosive projectiles forced the Nevermore to fly away, but the Death Stalker quickly came up behind her. Fortunately, Blake and Ren came to the rescue, swerving from opposite ends to slice at the front with their respective weapons. Weiss came to Nora's aid, conjuring a glyph underneath both to allow them to jump and gain some distance. As RWBY, Jaune, Jaune, and Pyrrha continued to run on the stone bridge, they happened to glance to the far right at the sound of a roar and saw the Goliath chasing Sonic and his friends. Team Sonic had emerged from the forest and were far enough from the ruins where the students were so they couldn't get mixed up in their own fight, but close enough to see the action. The four then came to a stop at the edge of the cliff and turned to face stampeding Goliath. Amy, Crockle Bomber. Sonic ordered. Tails, Fastball. Knuckles also ordered. Got it. They both nodded as Sonic curved up in a ball and prepared a spin dash attack. Amy pulled up on her Pico Pico and swung downward to send Sonic straight toward the charging Goliath like a cannonball. At the same time, Tails grabbed Knuckles by his wrists and spun his body around with an extra gust of wind provided by his spinning dual tails, gathering as much momentum as he could before letting go to send Knuckles flying in the same direction as Sonic, fists first. Sonic and Knuckles both collided into the center of the Goliath's outer skull with enough force to stop its advance, and even crack the skull a bit, but it wasn't enough to do any major damage as both Hedgehog and Echidna saw when they landed. Barley made a dent in that thing. Knuckles noted. Yeah, this feels like a real mini-boss, but we can take it. Sonic said. Let's go. He zoomed toward the massive elephant like Grimm with his usual speed, literally running circles around it, all while delivering homing attacks across its body. However, the Goliath lifted both its front feet into the air before slamming them down to shake the ground with enough force and trip Sonic up. However, Tails was quick to help as he had already picked up Amy and flew up over the beast to toss her toward the Goliath, allowing her to land on its back, where she proceeded to pound it with her hammer, while Tails joined up with Sonic to try and attack it from underneath. Knuckles had already leapt to climb up the Goliath's front left leg before leaping at the side of its face, digging one of his fists into the skull as he came close to its left eye, which he pounded in with his free fist. While Team Sonic dealt with the Goliath, Pyrrha had turned back to provide covering fire for Nora, Blake, and Ren, converting her javelin, Milo, into a rifle and placing it over her shield, Akoo, and firing at the charging Death Stalker. This allowed the students to regroup as they ran across a stone bridge, but the Nevermore circled back around and delivered a headbutt into the bridge, breaking off a large piece of it and separating the students. RWBY, Weiss, Jaune, Jaune, and Nora ended up on the side near the tower with RWBY already pulling out Crescent Rose to shoot the Nevermore as it flew away, while Jaune looked back to see Blake, Pyrrha, and Ren facing the Death Stalker alone, and it was not going well. Man, we gotta get over there. They need help. Nora ran to his side. Let's do this. Yeah, but Jaune looked down into the chasm, noting how wide a gap separated them from their fellow students. I can't make that jump. Nora merely smirked as she knocked him back with Monhild before converting it into its hammer mode. She leapt into the air and slammed it into the ground, shattering that part of the bridge, while also catapulting Jaune over the gap. No, 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 Jaune screamed. Nora then positioned herself on top of Monhild's mallet and fired its grenade to send her soaring over the gap as well, using the gathered momentum to pull up on Monhild and slam it into the Death Stalker. She saw its stinger about to lunge, but fired a grenade again to push her off and knock the Grimm further into the ground and avoid the stinger. This action, however, ended up pushing Blake off the edge and into the chasm. But she quickly threw one piece of Gamble Shroud, while it also fired to provide extra boost to embed the blade into a piece of the bridge. Where she used the ribbon to swing herself under the bridge and vault herself toward the Nevermore, producing a shadow clone to further close the gap, where she sliced at the Nevermore's face repeatedly, producing another shadow double to land on the Nevermore's back, rushing down and slicing with her weapon before leaping off its tail feathers to land on the perch of the castle ruins alongside RWBY, Jaune, and Weiss. It's tougher than it looks. Blake said. Then let's hit it with everything we got. Jaune stated as she readied Ember Celica. RWBY briefly looked down toward Jaune's group fighting against the Death Stalker, while Team Sonic continued to do battle with the Goliath. One look told her that they could handle themselves, they needed to focus on their own objective. RWBY, Jaune, and Blake fired their long-ranged gun attacks from their own respective weapons, while Weiss swung Mertanaster to send waves of fire, ice, and lightning at the incoming Nevermore. But the flying Grimm seemed to pass by or tank several of the attacks before flying down to ram the supporting pillars of the tower, causing the entire structure to collapse. But the girls remained calm as they used their respective semblances and weapons however they could to leap from each piece of falling debris before landing on the bridge. None of this is working, Weiss noted, which RWBY agreed with. But she also took notice of Blake using Gamble Shroud's ribbon, as well as Jaune standing on a broken pillar, firing shotgun shots from her gauntlets at the circling Nevermore. I have a plan, cover me. Meanwhile, Sonic had leapt straight to the Goliath, performing repeated homing attacks between its tusks, but the Goliath was able to shake him off and send him falling into the chasm, but Tails quickly flew in to catch Sonic and bring him back up to solid ground. We might be able to crack its armor, but nothing we got can deal any severe damage. Tails told Sonic as the blue hedgehog looked to see Knuckles and Amy leaping up and around its sides to punch and pound at it, but this only seemed to anger the creature. But as he glanced past it, he also noticed piece of the broken bridge from the Nevermore's attack had landed nearby and was positioned just right, almost like a ramp. He then turned around to note how wide the chasm was before he smirked. I got an idea. You see that piece of rubble right there? Sonic pointed for Tails. Be sure to get Dumbo in front of it and as close to the cliff as you can, he's gotta be positioned just right. And have Knuckles weaken the ground just in case, I'll handle the rest. Tails saw where Sonic was going with this and agreed instantly. You got it. Sonic then ran past the Goliath, moving as fast as he can to get to where he needed to fast enough. The Goliath lifted its upper right foot to stomp on Knuckles, but he stood his ground and caught the massive foot with both his hands. Despite the Goliath's incredible strength, Knuckles wouldn't budge, even with the ground caving in underneath him. It was a bit of a struggle for the echidna as he groaned, sweat flowing down his body from the strain. But with a mighty yell, Knuckles pushed up hard enough to knock the Goliath back, causing it to back away and nearly trip up on its own feet. Easy there, David. Amy ran to his side and helped Knuckles up before he could fall on his knees. Don't be a hero, that's Sonic's job. Very funny, Knuckles said, getting both jokes. Guys, over here. Tails called for them, prompting Knuckles and Amy to join him closer toward the edge of the cliff as the Goliath recovered and moved toward them. Where's Sonic? Amy questioned. Getting enough distance to finish it. Tails instructed. But we have to keep it in this spot. Knuckles, dig in the ground and try to make it unstable. Amy, we gotta keep its attention focused on us. We can't let it move away. Alright. Amy and Knuckles both understood as the Goliath was already on them. Knuckles then proceeded to use his natural digging ability to dig into the ground while Tails and Amy flew and ran literal circles around the Goliath with Tails flying in the clockwise direction while Amy ran counterclockwise. Back with Jaune's group, the Death Stalker pulled its stinger back, causing what remained of the bridge that they stood on to collapse. We gotta move, Jaune told them as the four quickly ran up the collapsing bridge, right as the Death Stalker lunged its right claw at them. But Pyrrha moved faster, using a Ko-Oh to parry and bounce the claw away, while Jaune used Crocea Morse shield to block the left claw that swung at them. They both pushed back to clear the way and allow Ren to fire Storm Flower at the Death Stalker's face before it lunged his stinger at him. Ren dodged and grabbed the stinger as the Death Stalker pulled back, allowing him to shoot at the Death Stalker's back while Jaune and Pyrrha kept it distracted with their respective blades. Nora came in, firing more grenades from Monhild, which the Death Stalker shielded itself from with its claws, also forcing Pyrrha and Jaune to slide back, though the latter did fall on his back. But Pyrrha threw out Milo in its javelin form, which also fired to provide an extra boost to embed itself in one of the Death Stalker's eyes. This caused it to screech in pain, flinging its stinger to send Ren flying and crashing into a nearby pillar. Ren! Nora exclaimed. Jaune pushed himself up to see the Death Stalker's stinger was partially dislodged and got an idea. Pyrrha. Done. She saw his intent and threw out a Ko-Oh like a frisbee, slicing off the stinger and allowing it to fall and slightly pierce the Death Stalker's head as the shield returned to its owner. Nora, nail it, Jaune ordered. Heads up. Nora converted her weapon into its hammer mode and leapt toward Pyrrha, who caught her with a Ko-Oh before jumping up and vaulting Nora, just as she fired Monhild again. The combined momentum sent the girl flying high into the air with a laugh before coming back down. She fired again to provide a bigger boost as she spun around, gathering more momentum before slamming her hammer into the embedded stinger, completely piercing and shattering the Death Stalker's armor, as well as the remainder of the bridge underneath it. This action also helped to catapult Jaune and Pyrrha over the collapsing bridge just as Nora launched herself over with another shot from Monhild. All three landed near the recovering Ren before they collapsed in exhaustion, with Ren and Jaune landing face first, Nora on her bum, and Pyrrha on her hands and knees. Sonic had managed to make it back to the temple where the relics previously were, while also using his own speed and power to clear the way of trees, and even a few remaining Grimm, to literally carve a straight path from that spot all the way back to the cliffs where the Goliath was. He could even barely see it in the distance. Alright, time to roll. Sonic spun his feet, gathering as much speed as he could, while also remaining stationary. He had to time this perfectly. Meanwhile, Jaune continued to fire multiple shots from Ember Celica at the circling Nevermore, and even got a lucky shot at the side of its face. But this only angered the beast as it flew at Jaune, who leapt straight at its open mouth. She used one arm to keep its upper beak from closing before firing several shots with her free hand down its throat. I hope you're hungry. Seeing the Nevermore about to close in on the cliff wall, Jaune leapt off just in time, causing the Nevermore to crash into the cliffside before landing on the platform that RWBY, Weiss, and Blake were on as they had their own attack planned as well. Weiss used her glyphs to slide herself quickly across the bridge, gunning straight for the recovering Nevermore. She wouldn't give it a chance to fly away before using a glyph to propel herself upward and lunge Murtinaster into its tail feathers, creating a cluster of ice that kept the Nevermore pinned. Weiss then flipped backwards and used another glyph to propel herself back to the main group. Standing on a pillar, Blake threw out Gamble's shroud, extending its ribbon as Jaune caught the weapon and embedded it into another pillar. RWBY then fired Crescent Rose to propel herself upward and land with the back of the scythe on the ribbon, her own feet on the weapon as well, while Weiss conjured a black glyph to pull RWBY and the ribbon backwards, creating a massive slingshot that was aimed at the struggling Nevermore. Of course, you would come up with this idea. Weiss commented, readying herself. Think you can make the shot? RWBY asked. Weiss only smirked confidently. Can I? That caused RWBY to look in confusion. Can why? Of course, I can. RWBY loaded up Crescent Rose, reading another round of shots, while also combing her own semblance with Weiss, causing the black glyph to turn red before they let loose. The glyph turned white as Weiss shot RWBY straight toward the Nevermore with an extra boost provided by RWBY's petal burst. She continued to fire from Crescent Rose to close the gap before catching the Nevermore by the neck with her scythe's blade, still firing to drag the Nevermore toward the cliffside just as RWBY landed. Weiss quickly created a long line of large glyphs under RWBY, leading straight to the top of the cliff. That gave her more speed, before she shot herself upward as she combined the speed of her semblance with shots from Crescent Rose to drag the Nevermore up with her, while also driving the blade of the scythe deeper into its neck. Right as she reached the top. Slice. Asterisk. She had completely decapitated the Nevermore, flipping through the air before landing gracefully at the top of the cliff. The Nevermore's body already began to disintegrate just as what was left of its corpse fell. Even from his position and building up as much speed and power as he could, Sonic could see what RWBY had done and gave an impressed whistle. Not bad. Let's see if I can top it. Confident he built up enough of his power, Sonic shot himself down his own made path, leaving a bright energy blue trail as he ran. The Goliath remaining, Amy and Tails kept flying and running over and under and all around it with such speed and moving in separate directions to keep it distracted and unable to move. All the while Knuckles dug in and out of the ground underneath the elephant-like Grimm repeatedly, causing the ground at the edge of the cliff to become more and more unstable. As he flew over, Tails looked on to see a bright blue light moving in their direction. It was time. He's coming. Move. Tails called to his friends as Knuckles had just emerged back up and ran from under the Goliath along with Amy with Tails flying away as well. The Goliath was about to turn and chase after them, but it was already too late. Sonic had zoomed down the path and up the piece of rubble he spotted before, using it like a makeshift ramp. While he was no physics expert like Tails, Sonic knew himself well, and how fast he needed to be to pull this off. Timing it just right and gaining enough momentum, that by the time he shot himself up the ramp. Boom. Asterisk. The roar of the sound barrier breaking echoed throughout the forest, the force of it broke apart the ground as Sonic himself pierced through the Goliath's whole body like a bullet and flying straight up at the right angle to land gracefully on his feet and right hand at the top of the cliff next to the shocked RWBY. With the force from Sonic's impact, and the ground shattering from the shockwave of the sonic boom, the Goliath had fell into the seemingly bottomless chasm. Even if Sonic's attack piercing through it wouldn't kill the beast, the fall will finish the job. Tails and Amy both smiled as Knuckles merely crossed his arms with an unsurprised smirk. They totally expected something this dramatic and effective from their blue friend. Jaune's group looked in shock and amazement. Wow, the blonde boy looked in awe, while Pyrrha and Ren's mouths had formed perfect O's, and even Nora had been rendered speechless. Holy crap, Jaune muttered as she stood with Blake and Weiss, the former holding her hands over her bowtie for some reason. He broke the sound barrier. That was a sonic boom. Weiss stuttered. Hence his name, Blake said, recovering from the ringing she felt in her own ears, that her own friends didn't seem to feel. Sonic dusted his hands with pride as he looked down the cliff. And that is how it's done. He turned to see RWBY, who held her hands near her cheeks as her silver eyes sparkled and a squealing sound was heard from her mouth, like she was ready to explode with joy. That was amazing. She practically screamed. How'd you do that? That was so cool. You made a sonic boom. Oh, that's why you're called Sonic. I've never seen anyone go that fast. And you knocked that thing off the cliff. You're awesome. Your friends are awesome. That is so awesome. Whoa there. Sonic chuckled as he grabbed RWBY by the shoulders. Calm down. Take a deep breath. He took one himself for demonstration, allowing RWBY to do so. It took 3 deep breaths to calm her down at least slightly. Yeah, that was cool. Nice finishing move yourself, by the way. You got a natural talent there, RWBY. You really think so? RWBY asked somewhat bashfully. Yeah, trust me. You got skill. Sonic confirmed before raising his hand. Now give me 5. RWBY smiled as she and Sonic exchanged a high five. However, there was another party watching everything that had been occurring in this forest. Hovering from high in the clouds, where nobody could see him, Metal Sonic had seen everything from Sonic and his team entering the forest with the students, to their battles with the Grimm. Metal Sonic had even managed to locate the Goliath that had been slumbering in the caves underneath the forest and awoken it, just to test what the Grimm were capable of and to see how Sonic and his friends would respond in this situation. Feeling like he's seen enough, with both his old foes and the students, Metal Sonic flew away from the forest, and not a single soul would know he was here. Back at the school, all the returning first years had gathered in the auditorium for the official formation of their team. Among them was a group of 4 young men that stood before Professor Ozpin as the hollow screen above showed the students' names and faces, as well as their team name. Russell Thrush, Cardin Winchester, Dove Bronzewing, Sky Lark, the 4 of you retrieved the Black Bishop pieces. Ozpin announced. From this day forward, you shall work together as Team CRDL, led by Cardin Winchester. Following an applause from the audience, the newly formed Team CRDL stepped away and allowed Jaune, Pyrrha, Nora, and Ren to step up next. Jaune Arc, Lai Ren, Pyrrha Nikos, Nora Valkyrie, the 4 of you retrieved the White Rook pieces. From this day forward, you will work together as Team JNPR, led by Jaune Arc. While Jaune looked in surprise, Nora leapt at Ren with a hug. L led by. Jaune did not expect to be made leader, but Pyrrha smiled. Congratulations, young man, Ozpin told him. Pyrrha gave Jaune a friendly punch in the shoulder, but this knocked him down onto the ground, much to her surprise and the amusement of the audience before they stepped off and allowed the final team to step up. And finally, Blake Belladonna, Ruby Rose, Weiss Schnee, and Yang Xiaolong, the 4 of you retrieved the White Knight pieces. From this day forward, you will work together as Team RWBY, led by Ruby Rose. None were more shocked by that than RWBY herself, even as her older sister pulled her into a hug. I'm so proud of you, Yang declared. At the same time, the ceremony was witnessed by Team Sonic as they stood from the highest part of the auditorium, out of sight of the audience. Though the rest of Beacon would probably come to know Sonic and his friends at a later date, it was still best to let the newly formed RWBY and JNPR have their moment. It was certainly well earned. Teams RWBY and JNPR, huh? Sounds catchy, Sonic said. I've got a good feeling we'll be working more with them in the future, even against Eggman. Tails said. How do you figure? Amy asked. Call it a hunch. Tails replied. Alright, I'll admit, those kids could handle themselves just fine. Knuckles said. Maybe this Huntsman Academy stuff isn't so bad. But, against Eggman, it's best they work with us. Fighting him and his robot army is completely different from a bunch of mindless monsters like the Grimm. Yeah, you're right, Knux. Sonic admitted. But with all of us working together, we can take him down. Just like always. Plus, there's still Shadow, Rouge, and Omega out there. Tails added. Once they join up with us and we fill them in, we'll be unstoppable. Amy praised excitedly. Sonic chuckled. Eggman, wherever you are, hope you're ready. 'Cause we're coming for you. Whatever you're planning, it's not gonna get off the ground. Meanwhile, Dr. Eggman sat back in a chair in an unknown location, looking at the holographic projection of the planet of Remnant with a sinister smile. Hey boss. Cubot called as he and Orbot entered the room. Guess who's back? He moved to the side dramatically as Eggman's deadliest robot walked toward his creator. Oh ho ho, welcome back Metal Sonic. Enjoyed your little field trip? Eggman asked as he swerved his chair around. A small port opened in Metal Sonic's forehead to project a recording of Sonic fighting alongside RWBY and Weiss in the Emerald Forest, before it shifted to a clip of Knuckles, Jaune, and Blake, then one of Tails, Jaune, and Pyrrha, then another of Amy, Nora, and Ren. Finally, he showed the recordings of their battle against the Nevermore, Stalker, and Goliath. It looks like Sonic and his friends are in Beacon, boss. Orbot observed. No sign of Shadow though. Oh, he'll show up soon. Eggman brushed off. Hedgehogs do travel in prickles. Wow, these kids look amazing. Cubot beamed. Those are some cool weapons, and they got superpowers too. It's almost like they're superheroes. It seems that maybe Sonic is already befriending the students at Beacon. Orbot said as Metal Sonic turned off the projection. Let him make as many friends as he wants, it won't be enough. Eggman said as he swerved his chair around to see the Remnant hologram again. He can't stop what I have planned for this world. No one can. Gah ha ha. Oh ho ho ho. Badges, burdens, and bonds. It was the middle of the night as the half-shattered moon shined over the mountain range that separated the kingdom of Vale from the wilderness of the Sanus continent. And at the base of the mountains, multiple explosions erupted as a battle appeared to be taking place. A streak of black and red dashed past a pack of Beowulfs, moving with such speed and ruthlessness, they were all cut down before they even had a chance to retaliate. Explosions of yellow energy erupting along the line that was carved through the pack, blowing the survivors away before the one in the back was knocked down and had its skull crushed by a hover skate worn by the ultimate life form. Mindless beasts. Shadow grunted in disgust as he saw the remains of all the Grimm he killed disintegrate into nothingness. He looked upward to see a Nevermore flying straight down toward him. Shadow responded by running up the side of one mountain to close the distance before leaping outward just as the Nevermore snapped its beak at him. While it was open, Shadow threw a Chaos Spear at the joint of its left wing to break off the limb and disorient the creature, allowing Shadow to finish it off with a homing attack straight to its head, causing it to crash and skid along the side of the mountain as Shadow performed a spin dash to grind its face against the mountain until there was nothing left. As Shadow landed gracefully on the ground, he glanced up as Rouge flew above him, with 4 griffins on her tail, snapping and cawing at her. She flew toward the side of one of the mountains before spinning around, perching her feet on the rocky wall before propelling herself to attack the flying Grimm. She spun around to deliver a spinning roundhouse to snap the neck of the closest griffin before jumping to land on the back of the second, grabbing it by the wings and pulling upward to disorient it before she lifted her right foot and slammed it onto its head to send it crashing into the third, where they both slammed and broke apart on the mountainside. The fourth and final one was about to claw at Rouge, but she limboed underneath and quickly placed one of her heart-shaped bombs on its underbelly before flying away just as the whole thing exploded. Rouge then sat down near her partner as he grabbed a Beowulf by its neck, holding it up with his strength alone. Shadow glared at the struggling and snarling Beowulf before he blasted a point-blank burst of chaos energy from the hand around the Beowulf's throat to blast its head clean off. This is what, the 8-pack we ran into? Rouge questioned. 10th, actually. Shadow corrected. Just how many of these Grimm things are there? Rouge complained as they heard a series of growls from behind, looking to see 3 Ursa charging them. However, before either could react, a rain of bullets tore through the three Ursa from behind before they were cut down after a few seconds. Hostiles are resilient. Heavier ordnance may be required. Omega commented, having used his machine gun arms to gun down the Ursa. A Borbitusk tried to come up from behind and curled its body into a ball before shooting out to obliterate the robot. But Omega quickly turned around and performed a powerful punch that not only halted the Borbitusk's advance, but also shattered its outer armor as it was sent flying backwards before Omega finished it off with a single missile. All creatures of Grimm must be eliminated, Omega declared. Good luck with that, Rouge replied. Based on what we've heard from those villages we've saved, this planet is full of them. Wolves, bears, giant two-headed snakes, heck, we even killed a giant Grimm elephant on the way here. Just what kind of insane place did Eggman zap us to this time? We're about to find out, Shadow said, glancing toward the mountains. This kingdom of Vale is on the other side of these mountain ranges. You think Sonic and the others are already there? Rouge asked. It is most likely, Omega replied. Based on the trajectory of our shuttle breaking apart upon entry to this planet's atmosphere, all allies would have landed relatively close to this particular kingdom. Regrouping in a stable environment would be the logical choice. Then let's get going, Shadow ordered. The sooner we regroup with the others and learn more about this planet, the sooner we can begin a counterattack. Shadow then proceeded to literally run up the mountain with Rouge flying after him, while Omega climbed and used his jet boosters to keep up. Beacon Academy, Ozpin's office. The headmaster sat quietly at his desk, sipping from his mug as he waited for the meeting to begin. Though he appeared to be alone at the moment, he would soon get a call coming in from his built-in scroll installed into his desk. He pressed a button to activate a hologram projector that shined 3 holograms of the other 3 headmasters across the room. The one in the middle was a middle-aged man clad in a white suit that seemed more appropriate for a military-based environment. He had black hair, which appeared to be graying on the sides, and dark blue eyes as he stood up straight. This man was James Ironwood, general of the Atlesian military and headmaster of Atlas Academy. The one on the right was another middle-aged man with tan-colored skin, gray hair and dark brown eyes. He wore a brown greatcoat with a matching mantle, a white dress shirt underneath his coat, and dark brown slacks and dress shoes. He also appeared to be a faunus with lion-like features such as his beard and hair shaped similar to a lion's mane as well as a lion's tail. This was Leonardo Lionheart, headmaster of Haven Academy. The last one on the left was yet another middle-aged man, who appeared to be the most well-built of the group. His skin was a bit darker and more tan than the others, with short black hair, wearing a sleeveless checkered vest, an ankle-length cape colored gray and dark blue, white slacks and dark gray boots. This was Theodore, the headmaster of Shade Academy. Gentlemen, Ozpin greeted his fellow headmasters with a nod, which they all returned in kind. I trust you've received my report. We have, and I have to say, Oz, this is straight up crazy. Theodore almost exclaimed. Aliens. If it weren't for the fact you showed us these recordings, I'd call you insane. Recently, I received a report from my best team of huntsman specialists of a hedgehog-like faunus with a speed-based semblance so powerful, he broke the sound barrier. Ironwood reported. While I do trust my men, I also found it too difficult to believe at first, assuming it was an exaggeration. But as Theodore pointed out, you've shown us recordings of this, Sonic the Hedgehog, and his own team of similar creatures, fighting alongside your first-year students in the Emerald Forest. These beings, Lionheart looked the most nervous as he pulled up his own scroll to look at the data again. We've never seen anything like this before. The ability to run at the speed of sound is one thing, but the red one was able to hold back a Goliath with only his bare hands. Are you certain they don't have semblances? I know it is incredibly difficult to believe, but I have seen it for myself. Ozpin told his colleagues. I even attempted to unlock Sonic's aura, and while I did sense a soul from him, I was unable to manifest anything. A being who possesses a soul while not having aura. Even I have never seen anything like that before, ergo while it may sound fantastic, I do believe this confirms the existence of worlds beyond our own. It would seem so, Theodore replied. Tell me Oz, what do you make of these guys? Sonic appears to be the leader of this group. Ozpin began to explain. Based on his interactions with the students in the forest, he has a brash and thrill-seeking personality, and yet he also carries a calm demeanor, facing off against large number of Grimm without losing his composure. He also displays an ability to adapt to the situation if it becomes too much for him. As for his champions, Tails appears to be the youngest and yet the most intelligent of the group, making sound and reasonable theories while also open-minded to learning new concepts. According to Sonic, he drew up schematics for a shuttle when he was only 6. That has to be an exaggeration. Ironwood said. I thought so at first, but based on his interactions with the students, he does appear to exhibit a great deal of intelligence. Ozpin continued. The red one, Knuckles, while appearing the physically strongest, appears among the more serious of the group. He has taken great issue with the approach of the academies in training children to fight the Grimm. But that's how things work in our world. Theodore commented. I don't know what his world is like, but rest assured, Knuckles understands the reasoning. Ozpin interrupted. He has proven to be open-minded as well. A small smile formed on his face. Though, it does warm my heart to see someone with great strength and power show concern for people he hardly knows. And the last one? Lionheart asked. Amy Rose. Despite her last name, she carries no relation to a certain huntress we were all acquainted with at one point or her family. A brief look of remorse and regret filled Ozpin's eyes before he got back on topic. While she appears to be fast, it does not seem to be at Sonic's caliber. Though she does display excellent proficiency with her personal weapon, but I do not believe that to be her greatest strength. Based on her interactions with the students, it seems her role in Sonic's team is that of emotional support, carrying an upbeat attitude and offering advice and consolation to those who need it. Speed, strength, intelligence, and emotional support. Theodore looked rather impressed. Seems like a very well-balanced team. And there are others with them. Another group they refer to as Team Dark. Ozpin answered. Consisting of 3 members, Shadow the Hedgehog, who has speed and abilities similar to Sonic as well as some form of energy manipulation, Rouge the Bat, who appears to specialize in espionage, and E-123 Omega, a robot that has its own sentience with great physical strength and vast array of built-in weapons. Though they have yet to arrive, Sonic is confident they will be here soon. This is all very interesting, and these aliens seem to be rather impressive individuals. Ironwood said. But I'm expressing more concern about their enemy that you say has come with them. Yes, Ozpin got serious. Dr. Ivo Robotnik, otherwise known as Dr. Eggman. According to Sonic, he opened a hole in space-time that allowed him to transport a fleet of airships manned by an army of his custom-built robots he refers to as badniks, as well as a commandeered space station known as Space Colony Ark, which appears to have settled in Remnant's orbit. A space station that just so happens to have massive cannon pointing downward. Ironwood stated. If this, Eclipse cannon, is as powerful as your report said, why is it we haven't received any demands for surrender or submission? Sonic theorizes that the Ark was heavily damaged upon its arrival to our world. Ozpin answered more calmly. The Eclipse cannon has apparently never been designed for transportation, so perhaps he is taking the time to repair it. And what happens once he fixes it up? Ironwood questioned. He could use it to wipe a continent off the face of the planet. Perhaps he can, but I don't believe he will, at least not right away. Ozpin said. How can you be sure, Ozpin? Ironwood questioned. Did you meet or see this man for yourself? No, I have not. Ozpin replied. But James, while I do understand your concern, I have taken into account the data Sonic and his friends have given me as well as their own word regarding this Eggman. He is, as Sonic puts it, a diva. If he were to utilize the Eclipse cannon, he would have already broadcasted his demands to all of Remnant by now. If he were to use it, I believe it would be as a last resort if his initial plan for our world fails. And what do you think his plan is? Lionheart asked nervously. Do Sonic and his friends know? No, they don't. Ozpin answered, much to the concern of the other headmasters. But perhaps we can take a guess based on the reports of his previous battles with Sonic. Based on first glance, it seems Eggman has a tendency to explore the paranormal and find ways of utilizing alien and mystical means to further his empire. The hologram of Theodore showed him skimming through the data on his scroll. Well, he seems to be creative, I'll give him that. Look at all this, weaponizing alien gravity generators, trying to harness reality warping power of these Chaos Emeralds, resurrecting a deity-like entity from the center of the planet. What in the world? That last part got Ironwood and Lionheart's attention. Ozpin pulled the data up on his desk's built-in scroll, found the file Theodore was looking at and opened it. A hologram appeared in the center of the room, showing the world that Sonic and his friends called home, breaking apart, much to everyone's surprise. But what really caught the headmasters off guard was the massive monster that arose from the mantle core underneath the broke crust. This beast had a serpentine-like body, massively long and slender arms, glowing purple tentacles along its back, and the face of what could only be described as a demon from hell as it roared loudly. What in the name of the brother gods is that? Lionheart practically screamed. According to this file, it is known as Dark Gaia. Ozpin explained as the hologram vanished. It dwells in the center of Sonic's world with its counterpart Light Gaia. These two beings exist in a cycle where Dark Gaia rises once every million years or so to destroy the planet, and Light Gaia puts it back together in a cycle of destruction and rebirth. But Eggman awoke Dark Gaia prematurely to try and harness its power for himself, but it proved too much to control and almost obliterated the entire planet, but Sonic and Light Gaia were able to seal it away before it came to that. Two godlike beings, one light and the other dark, existing in a form of balance. Theodore summed up. That sounds familiar. Indeed. Ozpin nodded. Though there were some notable differences, he couldn't help but draw the parallels between Dark and Light Gaia and two other entities he knew all too well. But still, the fact that this Eggman risked the destruction of his own world numerous times shows just how dangerous he is. Ironwood said. Ozpin, I want a serious answer. Given his tendency to dabble in forces beyond his apparent control, what are the chances he may become involved with her? In that moment, the temperature of the room dropped significantly. Lionheart shook like a leaf, like he was ready to have a panic attack while a grim expression formed on Theodore's face as his fists clenched. Ozpin remained silent for a moment before he finally spoke. Honestly, James, I'd say that is a very real possibility. Do Sonic and his friends know about her? No, I have not told them. Ozpin replied. Do you plan to? Ironwood asked. Maybe, but not right now. Ozpin answered. Hey, maybe this isn't all gloom and doom. Theodore said. Based on what we've read, it doesn't seem like Eggman's the type to share power. He might see her as a threat to his own empire and try to get rid of her. Heck, with a cannon that big, maybe the first continent he'll blow away will be her home turf. If he gets rid of her for us, I'd say that makes our job so much easier. Theodore, while I do see those two coming to blows with each other as a likely outcome, it may not bode well for the rest of us. Ozpin said. We all know what she's capable of with the Grimm at her command, and with an army like Eggman's, an open war between those two could put potentially millions of lives in the crossfire. It could even destroy all of Remnant. So, I do not believe the wait out the storm option is the best choice for us. Fair point. Theodore acknowledged. So, what do we do, then? Ironwood asked. For the moment, Eggman is outside of our reach, and Sonic is unable to get to him as well. Ozpin began. And we don't know for sure how she will respond to this. So, at the moment, I believe our best option is to let Eggman show his hand. He seems like the type to make the first move, in the most dramatic way possible. So, we just do nothing? Ironwood questioned. No, we prepare. Ozpin replied firmly. I urge you all to inform your closest confidants of the situation and tell them to be ready. I've already contacted Kiro. We will wait and let Eggman make the first move. Once he shows his hand and we have a better grasp of what he has at his disposal, we'll then best decide how to proceed. Ironwood took a moment to collect himself. I suppose that is our best and only choice, then. Alright. I'll contact the Ace Ops and Specialist Schnee right away. If needed, I'll have the military deployed. I will get in contact with my friends too. Lionheart stuttered slightly. With that, Ironwood and Lionheart's holograms vanished, leaving only Theodore's. Something the matter, Theodore? Ozpin asked. Oz, you know I trust you, but are you sure it's wise keeping Sonic and his friends in the dark about her? The headmaster of Shade asked. Looking at these files, they've dealt with worse. If they know, and with all of us working together, we might be able to finally get rid of her. While I hold out hope for that, old friend, we have to remember that her greatest strength is not her power, but her cunning, her manipulation. Ozpin said. I don't know Sonic and his friends all that much to say for certain they can outwit her, which is why I have yet to tell them. Perhaps I may, but I need to see more of their inner character before I make that decision. I see, Theodore knew they had to tread lightly when it came to their enemy. Like I said, I trust you. I just hope you know what you're doing. His hologram vanished, leaving Ozpin alone in his office once more. Ozpin leaned back in his seat to massage the bridge between his eyes. Just like all the times before, it was never so simple. And now, with the arrival of Sonic and Eggman, his task just became increasingly more complicated. While he did hold out some form of hope, thousands of years of defeat and betrayal have sadly tempered that particular emotion. All he could do now was observe, and like he'd always done, hope he was making the right choice. The next day, Weiss slept peacefully in her dorm, the morning sun shining brightly into the room through the open window. Her eyes flickered open as she pulled herself up with a yawn, having awoken from a rather peaceful slumber. Only to have RWBY blow a whistle loudly at her face, causing Weiss to fall out of her bed with a yelp. Good morning, Team RWBY. RWBY shouted enthusiastically, already fully dressed in her Beacon school uniform with her titular red-hooded cape. What in the world is wrong with you? Weiss exclaimed. Now that you're awake, we can officially begin our first order of business. RWBY declared. Excuse me, Weiss questioned, pulling herself up. Decorating, Jaune said, holding a cluster of knickknacks in her arms. She and Blake were also dressed in their school uniforms. What? Weiss questioned again. We still have to unpack. Blake held up her suitcase, which accidentally opened and spilled all her contents over the floor. And clean. Weiss, eyelids lowered, only to be blown back by RWBY's whistleblowing once again. All right, Weiss, Blake, Jaune, and their fearless leader RWBY have begun their first mission. Banzai. The young silver-eyed girl cheered. Banzai. Jaune and even Blake cheered as well, while Weiss lowered her head in emotional exhaustion. The four immediately began to decorate their dorm room. Jaune began to hang up posters of boy bands and movies she liked. Weiss put up portraits along the walls, after having gotten dressed in her school uniform as well. Blake put all her books in a bookshelf, making sure to keep the others from seeing her precious Ninjas of Love book. RWBY tried to adjust the curtain around the window with her crescent rose, only to accidentally slice it with her scythe blade. It appeared to be finished, only for the four girls to wince at just how tightly packed their room was. Between the beds, furniture, and all their decorations, there was absolutely no room to walk. They couldn't even see the floor. In fact, their beds were all piled on top of each other. This isn't going to work, Weiss pointed out. It is a bit cramped. Blake agreed. Maybe we should ditch some of our stuff, Jaune said. Or we could ditch the beds, an idea came to RWBY's mind. And replace them with bunk beds, she said excitedly. That sounds incredibly dangerous, Weiss said. And super awesome, Jaune pumped her fist. It does seem efficient. Even Blake seemed to agree. Well, we should put it to a vote. Weiss tried. I think we just did, RWBY said, as she, Jaune, and Blake seemed all for it, giving the bunk bed option the majority. So with reluctance, Weiss assisted her newly formed team in constructing the bunk beds. Though it appeared to be done in record time, neither appeared structurally sound. The one on the right was supported by a stack of books on each leg, while the other had the top bunk tied to the ceiling with rope and a sheet to act as a drape. Objective complete. RWBY seemed pleased with their work. This is not structurally sound, Weiss stated. What if one of them collapses? That could kill someone. I may have to agree, Blake said. It was a good idea RWBY, but we could probably do better. Yeah, we'll probably need to get someone to help later, Jaune also said. Okay, RWBY accepted. But right now, onto our second order of business, classes. She said that last part with much less enthusiasm as she took out her schedule book. Now, we have a few classes together today. At 9 we've got. What? Weiss suddenly exclaimed. Did you say 9 o'clock? It's 8:55, you dunce. The heiress shouted before she ran out of the dorm and into the hallway to get to class, alerting the newly formed Team JNPR that resided in the room across the hall. TT to class. RWBY tried to save some face as she, Jaune, and Blake ran out to catch up with Weiss. C-Class. Jaune stuttered as he tried to run out as well, only to trip and fall, but Pyrrha quickly pulled him up. We're gonna be late. He, Nora, Pyrrha, and Ren ran out as fast as they could as well. Meanwhile, Sonic laid relaxing on a beacon airship within the school's hangar. Ozpin allowed him and his friends access to it so that Tails could repair the Cyclone, even giving them access to dust supplies if need be. But that wasn't all. Ozpin had even showed them the weapons shop where they could make and modify any weapons they choose. Sonic was a hedgehog of simple taste, having already made his own weapon. The shop had an assortment of basic weapons from swords, to hammers, to guns, and other similar items. It also carried a variety of tools and equipment that would allow modifications and upgrades and even some parts to construct some brand new weapons. With someone like Tails at the helm, any new weapons they needed were constructed in no time. And the weapon currently in Sonic's hand was a long sword. It had a double-edged silvery blade and a lighter edge. The guard was a gold circle with two small gold protuberances or wings on the sides. He even had a pair of armored gauntlets tied around his waist with the scabbard of the sword to better wield it. Even though a simple sword would be enough, Sonic also wanted a certain pattern carved onto it, one that would honor the friend that he promptly named his sword after, Caliburn. After smiling reminiscently, Sonic stood up and sheathed the sword before jumping off the airship to meet up with Tails, who was currently using welding equipment to fix up the Cyclone while Amy and Knuckles stood by. Amy still carried her Pico hammer, saying that no modifications were necessary, and Sonic didn't protest. He knew very well just how dangerous that hammer was all on its own. However, Knuckles had decided to have a custom weapon of his own. The red echidna wielded a pair of what appeared to be twin axes, sheathed at his sides. They each had a single silver edge with two spikes attached to the lower end of the blade. He decided to name his weapon, Galatine. Sonic said nothing but mentally noted the irony. Yo Tails, how's the Cyclone coming along? Sonic asked as he saw Tails stop to take a break, lifting up his welding mask to speak to Sonic. Pretty good so far, Tails replied. I've already repaired most of the internal structure, and thankfully the power core was intact so we don't need to find a new power source for it. The issue here is weapons. Can't you just use that dust stuff? Knuckles asked. Most of these huntsmen use it with their weapons. I've only managed to get a peek at Dust's internal structure, at best I only know the basics. Tails explained. I'd need to know a bit more before I can implement it into the Cyclone. How long do you think you'll need? Amy asked. In response, Tails walked up to a large case on the side before opening it to reveal a cluster of different types of dust crystals. Thankfully, Ozpin is allowing us access to what he has here at Beacon. In my equipment I should be able to get a better understanding by tomorrow. Once I do I should be able to fully integrate it into the Cyclone's weapon system. Look at you, buddy. Sonic gave Tails a friendly noogies. Less than 24 hours and you're an expert with a new element. Einstein's got nothing on you. Tails chuckled before pulling away from Sonic and got serious again. But there is one fundamental flaw I have noticed with Dust so far. What's that? Amy asked. It's pretty much a one-time use. Tails said. Once the energy is exhausted, it's rendered inert. Maybe I can find a way to regulate the output, but again I need more time to analyze and study it before I have anything concrete to work with. I'm sure you know what you're doing. Knuckles said. Speaking of weapons, why do we need any? The echidna asked as he pulled out one of his axes. Not that I'm complaining, but we can handle ourselves just fine against the Grimm without weapons. Hey, everyone here's got some fancy weapon. Sonic replied with a smirk. It wouldn't be fun if we were left out, wouldn't it? Knuckles shook his head with a slight smile. Somehow, I knew that was your answer. Well, I'll see you later guys. Sonic said, preparing to head out. Think I might take a jog around the school, maybe see how RWBY and the others are doing. What is it about that girl that interests you so much, Sonic? Knuckles asked. I know you're the type to make friends with pretty much everyone, but you seem really interested in her. Is it because she has the same last name as mine? Amy asked in a swooning-like fashion, coming very close to Sonic. A possible sister-in-law someday. Sonic backed away slightly from Amy's advance. And no, nothing like that. It's just, I can't quite explain it. There's something about that girl that's unique. Apparently, having silver eyes is a pretty rare thing here on Remnant. Silver eyes? Tails asked. Yeah, something about those eyes. Sonic couldn't quite explain it, but he felt something with those eyes, and by extension, RWBY herself. But he quickly shrugged. Or maybe I'm just overthinking it. She's a fun kid. Yeah, that makes more sense. Knuckles said with an acceptant nod. Anyway, see ya later. Sonic then sped off. Monster. Demons. Prowlers of the night. Yes, the creatures of Grimm have many names. Professor Port began to lecture his class, in which Team RWBY attended in full. But I merely refer to them as prey. He attempted at a jest but got no response from his class. If anything, he just barely woke RWBY up from her nap of being bored by his story. And you shall too, upon graduating from this prestigious academy. Port continued. Now, as I was saying, Vale, as well as the other 3 kingdoms, are safe havens in an otherwise treacherous world. Our planet is absolutely teeming with creatures that would love nothing more than to tear you to pieces. And that's where we come in, huntsmen, huntresses. He clicked at that last term, causing Yang to roll her eyes in annoyance. Individuals who have sworn to protect those who cannot protect themselves. From what, you ask? Why, the very world. He announced dramatically. Yeah. Only one student cheered, which received stares from the other students, causing him to sink back into his seat embarrassingly. That is what you are training to become. Port continued. But first, a story. A tale of a young, handsome man, me. As he began to monologue his own personal story, Weiss glanced to her left to see RWBY apparently writing something on a blank piece of paper. She was somewhat surprised at RWBY apparently taking notes at this otherwise boring story, but even more surprised at RWBY's snickering. It was revealed that RWBY had drawn a funny picture of Professor Port, making him look like a fat stinky man. While Weiss glared slightly at RWBY, Yang and Blake happened to see the picture and snickered along with her. A cough got their attention, focusing back on Port, who began to wrap up his story. In the end, the Beowulf was no match for my sheer tenacity. And I returned to my village with the beast in captivity and my head held high. Celebrated as a hero. He bowed, signaling the end of his story. The moral of this story: a true huntsman must be honorable, a true huntsman must be dependable, a true huntsman must be strategic, well-educated, and wise. As he lectured, Weiss glared harder and harder at RWBY, who didn't even appear to pay attention to the lecture. If anything, she seemed more interested in her childish antics, which seemed to only spur Weiss' inner fury even more. So, who among you believes themselves to be the embodiment of these traits? Port asked his students. In response, Weiss immediately and aggressively raised her hand. I do, sir. Well then, let's find out. Port said as he turned toward the side of the room where a cage containing a Grimm was stationed. Step forward and face your opponent. After taking the time to get changed into her huntress outfit and equipping her weapon, Weiss made a combat stance, pointing Myrtanaster at the cage. Go Weiss. Yang cheered. Fight well. Blake waved a small flag that had RWBY written on it. Yeah, represent Team RWBY. RWBY also cheered. RWBY, I'm trying to focus. Weiss scolded her leader, causing her to sink into her seat. Oh, sorry. Alright. Let the match begin. Port used his own weapon to cut open the cage, setting loose the Borbatusk Grimm inside that immediately charged at Weiss, who swiftly rolled out of the way to slice at its side, but the Borbatusk's armored hide protected it. The creature rounded to face Weiss once more. Ha, wasn't expecting that, were you? Port said to the heiress. Hang in there, Weiss. RWBY cheered. Weiss used a glyph to shoot herself forward at the Borbatusk as it charged at her, but it swung its tusks, catching Myrtanaster, and tried to swing Weiss away as she lost her footing. But she quickly regained it as she tried to pry her weapon free with the Borbatusk struggling against her. Bold in your approach, I like it. Port observed. Come on Weiss, show it who's boss. RWBY continued to cheer, but this distracted Weiss, causing her to lose her grip on her sword, which the Borbatusk threw away with its tusks before knocking Weiss back with its primary weapons. Oh ho. Now what will you do without your weapon? Port asked. Weiss gasped as the Borbatusk charged at her, but she dodged and rolled out of the way just in time as the Grimm slammed into the wall behind her before she made a break to retrieve Myrtanaster. Weiss, go for its belly. RWBY told her. There's no armor underneath. Stop telling me what to do. Weiss yelled, causing RWBY to lower herself. The Borbatusk roared before rolling into a ball and spun toward Weiss at high speed, but she conjured a glyph to break its advance, knocking it on its back. She leapt into the air where a second black glyph was conjured to propel herself at the downed Grimm, impaling it through its underbelly, killing it. Bravo! Bravo! Port nodded as Weiss took a moment to catch her breath. It appears we are indeed in the presence of a true huntress in training. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Be sure to cover the assigned readings and stay vigilante. Class dismissed. As the class ended and the students began to leave, RWBY couldn't help but look with concern and worry, at her teammate and at herself. Weiss. RWBY caught up to her in the hallways. What? The heiress glared. What's wrong with you? Why are you being? What's wrong with me? Weiss questioned. What's wrong with you? You're supposed to be a leader. And all you've been so far, is a nuisance. RWBY scoffed. What did I do? That's just it. You've done nothing to earn your position. Weiss told her. But what about in the forest with Sonic and his friends? RWBY asked. About, is starting a professional relationship. Well, perhaps you should act professional. Take this seriously. Weiss argued. If that's how you intend to lead this team, then I'm not sure I want to be a part of it. I studied, and trained, and quite frankly, I deserve better. She turned around with her arms crossed. Ozpin made a mistake. As she walked away, RWBY looked down, a strong sense of hurt filling her being. She was about to walk away before. Wow, a real ice queen that won. RWBY turned around the corner to see Sonic looking at her with a concerned expression. Sonic, what are you doing here? He gave an assuring smile as he motioned for him to follow her. Come on kid, I feel like we need to have a talk. As Weiss made her way outside onto a balcony to get some fresh air, she happened to stumble upon the professor of her previous class. Professor Port. Ah, Miss Schnee. The professor turned to greet her. And to what do I owe this fine pleasure? I enjoyed your lecture. She told him. Of course you did, child. You have the blood of a true huntress in you. Port said. You really think so? Weiss asked with a hopeful smile. Most surely. Port confirmed, but he also noticed a faraway and uncertain look in her eyes. Something's troubling you. Yes, sir. Weiss said with a small nod. Dear girl, confess to me your strife. He encouraged her. Well, I think I should have been the leader of Team RWBY. Weiss said outright. Port had listened to what she had to say, and had a response set immediately. That's preposterous. Excuse me, Weiss questioned. I've believed in Professor Ozpin for many years, and the man's never once led me astray. Port said. So, you would just blindly accept his decision, even after seeing how exceptional I am? Weiss questioned once again. With all due respect, your exceptional skill on the battlefield is matched only by your poor attitude. Port criticized. How dare you? Weiss exclaimed. My point exactly. Port nodded. I see a girl before me who has spent her entire life getting exactly what she wanted. That's not even remotely true. Weiss said, briefly looking away as a small flash of emotional pain filled her eyes. She noticed Port raising one of his eyebrows slightly at her. Well, not entirely true. So, the outcome did not fall in your favor. Port continued. Do you really believe that acting in such a manner would cause those in power to reconsider their decision? So instead of fretting about what you don't have, savor what you do. Hone your skills, perfect every technique, and be not the best leader but the best person you can be. Try to keep an open mind about the rest of your teammates, you may find there's more to them than meets the eye. As she thought about all this, a small smile formed on her face. Thank you, sir. Meanwhile, Sonic had led RWBY to a rooftop where the two could speak in a more private setting without any eavesdroppers. RWBY had told Sonic what had happened in her class, and he listened to every word. Dang, little Ice Queen's a stubborn knucklehead in her own right. Sonic commented. Was she right though? RWBY asked. Did Ozpin make a mistake in making me the leader? You tell me. Sonic said. You've only been the leader for literally 1 day, and you haven't even done any real missions yet. Seems a little too early to be unsure of yourself. But what if I make a mistake on a mission? RWBY began. What if something happens and I... Hold on, I'm gonna stop you right there. Sonic began. It's good if you wanna think and plan ahead, but you gotta stop asking all this, what if I screw up? Stuff. Don't tell yourself you're gonna do something wrong, or all you're gonna deal with is trouble. But, while she did act like a jerk, Weiss did make one good point. You're the leader of a team and that's a big responsibility, something you gotta take seriously. Are you a leader? RWBY asked. Kinda, Sonic said with a shrug. It wasn't put to a vote or decided or anything, it just sort of happened. Originally it was just me and Tails, then we got Amy and Knuckles, and before we knew it, we had our team. But just because you're in charge, that doesn't mean you call all the shots. It means listening. What do you mean? RWBY asked again. Everyone on your team has something they're good at, take a look at my team. Sonic continued. You know I'm the fast one, Knuckles is the muscle, Tails is the brains, and Amy's the heart. I can't solve advanced calculus or lift a school bus or anything like that. Each of them contributes in their own way and they have different ideas than I do. Just because I'm the leader doesn't mean my ideas are better than theirs, some of their ideas are actually better than anything I can come up with. We talk to each other, we listen to each other, and we compromise with each other. That's what you gotta do with your team, listen to what they have to say and find a way to compromise. Don't be afraid to ask them questions if you have to. If you can't do any of that, you're never gonna get along with them and the whole team will fall apart. RWBY had listened to every word Sonic had to say, and it did make sense. He really did sound like he spoke from experience. Weiss may be stubborn, but she did say she studied and trained. She was also older, so she probably had more experience than her. Maybe asking her for help and advice might be the best approach to at least establishing a better partnership. A smile formed on the girl's face. Thanks Sonic, that really helps. Hey, it's what I do. Sonic grinned. RWBY then noticed the sword sheathed on his back. You got a weapon. Yep. He pulled out Caliburn. Everyone here's got one, so might as well. That sword looks really cool. RWBY beamed, looking at the sword that bore the same structure and design as the magical one he based it off of. Just a regular sword though. Sonic described. No fancy pop-up blades or built-in guns, just a sword. No offense to you RWBY, but guns aren't my style. None taken, I love the classics. RWBY stated as they both stood up. So, you got a cool name for it. Everyone's gotta name their weapon. Yep, Caliburn. Sonic confirmed. Caliburn. RWBY wondered, tilting her head. Named after a friend. Sonic explained briefly. Hey, speaking of friends, you said Tails was the brains of your team, right? RWBY asked. Does he know anything about building bunk beds? Later that night, Ozpin sat in his office once again as Sonic hopped up through the back window and dashed to skid in front of his desk. Yo, you wanted to see me, Professor? Yes, though you could have simply come in through the front door. Ozpin told him. Not my style, Sonic said. To each his own then. But getting to the main reason I called you here. Ozpin began. I was in contact with the other headmasters, and they agreed to be ready for when your foe, Dr. Eggman, makes his move. Now all we do is wait for said move. Yeah, sorry about that. Sonic apologized. I'm not a big fan of waiting too. If we had a way to get to space, we could shut down Eggman before he starts his invasion. But, that's not an option. No, but it is our only one. Ozpin said. Though we do have friends who are willing to take a stand against him now thanks to your warning. Speaking of friends, I believe I may have an idea of where your other comrades might be. That got Sonic's attention. Really? Yes, I have received reports of multiple robberies across the Kingdom of Vale. Ozpin explained. All of them were thwarted rather swiftly, though the criminals responsible have been put in critical condition, most even needing treatment at nearby hospitals, under police guard of course. Fortunately, there are no fatalities, though many of those still somewhat conscious have claimed to see a blur of black and red before experiencing what could only be described as extreme brutality. Sonic chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his head. Yeah, that sounds like Shadow. He's not the type to pull his punches. Thanks for letting me know, I'll get him and the rest of his pals. Do you even know where to find them? Ozpin asked. With my speed, I can sweep the entire city before dawn. Sonic answered. And Shadow and his pals won't be too hard to find, just gotta listen to the sound of explosions and screams of agony. He joked before running out the window. Later, he gave a finger salute as he fell backwards and ran down the side of the building. Ozpin got up to see a trail of blue rushing through the grounds of his academy before leaving the perimeter, heading in the direction of the city of Vale, clearing a vast distance in mere seconds. I don't know if I'll ever get used to that, Ozpin said to himself, which says a lot given his own unique experiences. Night had already fallen as Weiss entered her team's dorm. She was surprised to see the bunk beds they hastily constructed earlier in the morning now appeared far more stable. They weren't just stacked on top of each other or being suspended by ropes on the ceiling. There was proper construction around the posts which looked incredibly secure, like they were fixed up by a professional. She noticed Jaune and Blake sleeping on the right bunk with the latter the top and former on the bottom. Weiss saw a sheet draped over the top bunk of the left bed where RWBY most likely was, with a soft light emanating from it. Lifting the drape, Weiss wasn't surprised to see RWBY asleep, but she was surprised to find her asleep with a pencil in her hand and papers and textbooks scattered around her, as well as an empty coffee mug. Had she been studying this late at night? Weiss gently nudged RWBY awake, who was startled by the heiress' sudden appearance. Weiss. I was studying, and then I fell asleep and the younger girl was stopped when Weiss covered her mouth with her hand. How do you take your coffee? Weiss asked, removing her hand from RWBY's mouth. RWBY looked somewhat confused at the question. I don't. Answer the question, Weiss insisted. Cream and 5 sugars, RWBY quickly said, making sure to stay quiet enough to not wake up Jaune and Blake. Don't move, Weiss told her, grabbing the coffee cup and going to a nearby coffee maker to quickly prep a new cup with RWBY's specifications and handed it to the silver-eyed girl. Here. Thanks Weiss, RWBY said, in a mixture of appreciation and confusion. I noticed the bunk beds seem a little more secure now, Weiss observed. Did you fix them up? No, that was Tails. RWBY answered. The fox who's friends with Sonic? Weiss asked. Yeah, he's wicked smart, RWBY told her. Like, maybe smarter than all the teachers here at Beacon combined. And you were right about the bunk beds being a hazard, so I asked him fix it up. Weiss smiled before speaking in a professional manner. RWBY, I apologize for my earlier outburst. I did say back in the forest that we'd start with a professional relationship. On that note, I think you have what it takes to be a good leader, and I promise to be the best teammate I can be. RWBY returned the smile. And, I promise to take this job seriously, and to listen to anything you might have to say. I don't mind compromising. Good. Weiss nodded. With that in mind, your answer right there is wrong. She pointed to something RWBY wrote on her notes. She got down and began to walk out, but stopped at the doorway. Oh, and RWBY, a small childlike smile formed on her face. I always wanted bunk beds as a kid, she said before closing the door. RWBY then turned back to her studies with a happy grin. Maybe things would work out between them after all. City of Vale. 6 thugs were thrown out through the glass window of a large dust shop, causing them to crash into 3 black vans that were parked outside. All the vans opened up to reveal several more thugs, making up 3 dozen in total, all wearing the same black suits with red ties and sunglasses. They looked toward the broken window to see none other than Shadow the Hedgehog standing on the window frame with a glare. Get it, one thug ordered as all 3 dozen of them charged forward, carrying machetes, pocketknives, or even Tommy guns. In less than a second, half of them were swept up in a black tornado before a blur of black and red shot up and hit every single one of them while they were airborne. Those with guns tried to aim their weapons at the blur, but something swooped in to swipe all their guns away, causing them to look in surprise to see Rouge hovering in the air, all their guns in her arms before she dropped them. Didn't your mommies ever tell you boys not to play with guns? She teased before going on the attack, striking both her feet into the gut of one thug to send him crashing into 2 others. One tried to punch at her from behind, but she easily swerved around him and dealt a kick to his back and knocked him down before flipping to land on her hands and deliver a split kick into the faces of 2 oncoming grunts. All the thugs that were airborne had landed on the hard and unforgiving ground, covered in bruises and cuts, some even had their limbs bent the wrong way, as Shadow landed in the middle of the pile, glancing to see the remaining goons attempting to pile up into one van and drive away. However, the van didn't get very far at all as Omega landed in its path and grabbed its front with his hands, digging his feet into the ground to keep it from moving. Even with the guy at the steering wheel flooring on the gas pedal, Omega wouldn't budge. He then used his own strength to flip the entire van over himself, causing it to fly in the air before landing upside down with a crash behind him. The 4 remaining thugs that were still conscious limped and crawled out from the opening in the van, only to gasp as Omega aimed their guns at them. "Remember Omega, don't kill them," Rouge told him. "We don't know the laws around here and we don't wanna get on the bad side of any law enforcement." "Acknowledged," Omega replied before firing his guns at the thugs' legs, causing them to fall over as they hollered in pain. Their aura had been severely weakened by the crash, so their legs had been severely unprotected. They are not terminated, though their legs have suffered critical and even permanent damage. There is only a 34% chance of them being able to walk again. Rouge shook her head with a slight chuckle, observing the thugs Omega crippled and all the others that Shadow left in a pile, all of whom likely had most of their bones broken or dislocated. "Who needs vigilantes when we got you two?" she joked as the two regrouped. "But seriously, this is 10th jewelry shop we've seen getting hit. And I keep count for stuff like that. I get there are people who want to steal jewels. Is you are a former jewel thief yourself?" Omega noted. "Guilty as charged," Rouge said with a hint of pride in her voice. "But this seems really excessive. Because these are not simple jewels," Shadow said, walking over to a broken case one of the thugs had when they robbed the shop. He kicked it open to reveal a set of colored crystals, picking up the red one. The fact that items like these are sold in small stores at relatively low prices compared to anything on our world suggests this is more than simple jewelry. Shadow handed the red dust crystal to Omega, who quickly analyzed it. This particular crystal has a combustible element to it. Omega then performed a scan on the other crystals in the case. Similar properties are in each of these crystals, some having an electrical charge. "So, what people weaponize jewelry here?" Rouge questioned before scoffing. "That's rather barbaric." "Hey guys." Team Dark turned to the sound of a familiar voice as a blue burr appeared before them. "Glad to see you're as brutal as ever." Sonic noted the scene around them in a joking sense. "Blue, I see you're still in one piece." Rouge smiled, while Shadow and Omega simply acknowledged his presence. "Not the first time I fell from orbit." Sonic grinned. "Where are the others?" Shadow asked pointedly. "Nice to see you too, Shadow," the blue hedgehog said to his anti-hero counterpart before giving his answer. "Don't worry, everyone's safe." "Where is Eggman?" Omega questioned. "He must be destroyed for this transgression of space-time." "Best guess, he's still on the Ark," Sonic said. "And before any of you ask, no, this world does not have space travel. Their fuel stops working just before it leaves the atmosphere, so we can't get to Eggman yet." "Unacceptable," Homage declared as Shadow looked away with a scowl, while Rouge rolled her eyes in annoyance. "This planet will develop space travel, even if I must hold their scientists at gunpoint." "How about we don't do that?" Sonic suggested, trying not to make enemies here. "You still didn't answer my question," Shadow told Sonic. "Where exactly are the others? Give me a location." "Straight to the point, huh?" Sonic noted with a raised eyebrow, but was interrupted at the sound of sirens coming closer. "It'll be easier to explain if we're not in the slammer. Come on, follow me." Sonic ran off with Shadow at his tail, and Rouge and Omega close behind as well. "I'll fill you guys in on everything." The next day, Beacon Academy. While most of the student body was in the cafeteria eating lunch, teams RWBY and JNPR had met up with Tails, Knuckles, and Amy in the courtyard to show them a certain something Tails had been working on. "Ladies and gentlemen, behold the Cyclone." Tails showed the 8 students his newly built blue plane, which looked so brand new that it even shined. "Whoa, you built a plane," RWBY exclaimed excitedly. "That looks so awesome," Nora exclaimed in a similar fashion. "Well, Tails actually had the Cyclone for a long time, he just had it fixed up after literally crashing here." Amy summed up. "How old are you again?" Weiss asked Tails. "Helping to build bunk beds is one thing, but constructing a fully operable plane at such a young age." "I'm 12, but I've built the Cyclone when I was 9. Tails answered, causing the group of students to look with wide eyes and drop jaws. "You built that thing when you were 9 years old?" Jaune exclaimed. "Yep," Tails said with pride. "Aw, aren't you just the cutest little genius?" Yang teased as she playfully rubbed Tails' head. "This Cyclone looks quite impressive." Pyrrha took a good look at it, with RWBY, Blake, and Ren doing the same. Seems very aerodynamic, she felt her hand along the side. A strong outer hull, this is quite an engineering feat. What sort of power source does it have? Ren asked. I've heard that you don't utilize dust where you come from. It's a customized solar-powered fusion core. Tails explained. This way it is fuel efficient, and the core allows it to store up as much power as possible so there is little to no chance of it running low. Very nice. Blake nodded. I have a question. Jaune raised his hand. Why do you even need a plane? You can already fly. Why do you need to use a car? You can already run. Amy responded to Jaune's question. Everyone gets tired, this makes transpiration easier. Plus, it can fly faster than he can naturally. Oh, how fast does this baby go? Jaune asked eagerly. It was built to try and match Sonic's speed. Tails answered. So, it can reach up to 800 miles per hour in less than a minute. Seriously. RWBY, Weiss, Jaune, Nora, and Blake all exclaimed. And it's not just a plane. Knuckles said mysteriously with a smirk and crossed arms. This prompted Tails to climb up into the cockpit and press a few key commands, causing the Cyclone to shift and transform into its kart mode as the wings folded inward and wheels came up from the sides. If I have to stay close to the ground, I can convert it into its kart mode. But it can move just as fast here as in the air. Tails said before he smirked. And that's not even the best part. Check this out. He pressed another key command, allowing the Cyclone to transform into its walker mode as a pair of legs appeared to stand the Cyclone up above the heads of the surprised students. Whoa. Jaune's eyes felt like they were about to roll out of his sockets. Cyclone battle mode. Tails presented dramatically. I may lose its speed advantage here, but all its weapons are available, and it's built like a tank. Even the Grimm would have a hard time getting through this baby. He patted the side of the Cyclone with pride. So, it's a plane, that's also a car, that's also a battle mech. RWBY squealed as stars formed in her eyes. That is the coolest thing I have ever seen. What kind of weapons does it have? Nora exclaimed in a similar fashion. Tell me all the ways it can make stuff go boom. Tails chuckled at everyone's excitement over his most beloved invention. It's armed with a Vulcan cannon minigun, a targeting laser, a grappling hook, and a set of missile launchers. I've also managed to implement dust into its weaponry too. I thought you were having trouble with that. Knuckles recalled Tails' dilemma the previous day. Until I found out that dust can be grounded into powder, which makes weaponizing it so much easier than just using the crystals themselves. Tails explained. Right now, I've got fire, ice, lightning utilized into most of its weaponry. Though I'm thinking I can also use hard light dust as a shield, but keeping it up constantly would be trouble considering dust pretty much has a one-time usage before it's rendered inert. I might be able to help with that. Weiss offered. Being the heiress of the largest dust producers on the planet comes with the added benefit of being rather knowledgeable with our product. I've studied the structure of dust as well, maybe I can help too. Pyrrha also offered. That'd be great. Tails smiled. Thanks. Hey Tails, what do you say you let me take this piece of legitimate badassery out for a spin, huh? Jaune suggested with an eager grin. No way, sis. I already got dibs. RWBY ran up to her. Since when did you call dibs? Jaune challenged. Since right now. I call dibs. RWBY argued. I call dibs times infinity. Nora popped up in between them. Let me all the Grimm go boom. As the three argued over who would get a chance to drive the Cyclone first, Amy smiled while Knuckles shook his head slightly with a grin as the former looked at the other students. Any of you guys wanna take it out for a test drive? The pink hedgehog teased. No thanks. Weiss shook her head. I'm good. Blake added. Same. Ren said. Yeah, I don't know how to fly a plane or a mech, Jaune said nervously. It's very impressive, but I'm not familiar with the controls of such a device. Pyrrha said politely. However, while RWBY continued to comically struggle against Jaune and Nora for who would pilot the Cyclone first, she noticed something out of the corner of her eye. Something that was moving very fast and heading in this general direction. She knew only one thing that would go that fast. Hey, Sonic, she called out as a blur shot past the group, getting everyone's attention. But the blur stopped to reveal it wasn't Sonic, but rather a black and red hedgehog that glanced back at the students with a stoic look on his face. That's not Sonic. Jaune observed. Shadow. Tails flew toward him with Knuckles and Amy right behind. You made it. Befriending children, I see. Shadow observed, glancing at the students. Unsurprising. Listen, you should know that, Knuckles attempted to explain everything to him. I had already discussed it with Sonic and I'm aware of the situation. Shadow interrupted. I'm going to meet this Ozpin now. Where is he and the rest of your team? Amy asked. Should be here in a moment. Shadow replied, before turning around, only for RWBY to dash in front of him with a friendly smile. Your name is Shadow. That's a really cool name. I'm RWBY, nice to meet you. She offered her hand to shake. Shadow took a moment to observe the girl. So, this was the silver-eyed girl named RWBY that Sonic had told him and his team about. She was apparently the youngest girl in this group, advancing 2 years ahead of when students normally attend these huntsman academies. At first glance, she didn't look that impressive. But Shadow knew all too well that appearances can be deceiving, and while he didn't always get along with Sonic, he knew the blue hedgehog was no fool. So perhaps he will have to see what she can do himself before he can make any sort of judgment, but that wasn't his priority now. The ultimate life form dashed past RWBY and sped his way toward Beacon Tower, leaving the younger girl perplexed and her older sister a little irritated. What's his problem? Young questioned, not liking her younger sister being brushed off like that. Don't take it personally, Tails said. Shadow's like that with everyone. Yeah, he's always straight to the point. Knuckles added. Well, he was certainly interesting. Blake commented. Ah, so you guys met the Hedgehog, huh? They heard a familiar voice and turned to see Sonic arrive on the scene. Yeah, he does leave that sort of impression. Sonic. RWBY came up to him first. Where have you been? Getting the rest of the team. He gestured behind him to see the approaching Rouge and Omega, the robot obviously drawing the students' attention. Whoa, is that a robot? Jaune exclaimed. Indeed, I am Omega, the ultimate E-Series robot. The former badnik introduced as the other students gathered around him. I haven't seen anything this cool outside of comics. RWBY squealed. This one looks far more advanced than any of those drones Atlas has produced. Weiss observed. It even seems to be automated, even speaking on its own. Omega's equipped with his own artificial intelligence, so he can think and feel entirely on his own. Tails explained. That is rather impressive. Blake commented. Very interesting. Ren noted. You gotta any cool weapons on ya? Nora asked Omega. Affirmative. Omega confirmed as his arms opened to show the multitude of weapons that he had built in. I am currently equipped with rotary cannons, flamethrowers, missile launchers, and semi-automatic wrist cannons. I am also strong enough to lift the equivalent of 100 metric tons with additional power from my rear boosters. My outer armor is composed of a special titanium alloy that is nigh impenetrable. I am the ultimate killing machine. RWBY, Nora, and even Jaune looked with stars in their eyes and wide grins as the youngest girl practically squealed, while Jaune, Weiss, Ren, Pyrrha, and Blake had circular eyes and lowered jaws. Pal, you and I are gonna be good friends. Jaune leaned her arm against Omega's right shoulder with an eager. Let's go Grimm hunting. Nora cheered. Affirmative. All creatures of Grimm must be eliminated. Omega declared. And I'm apparently chopped liver. Rouge said with a grin and a shrug, getting the rest of the students' attention. Oh, sorry about that. Pyrrha apologized. Don't worry, a walking weapon of mass destruction like Omega is bound to get anyone's attention. Rouge assured. Anyway, the name's Rouge. Nice to meet you, Rouge. Pyrrha shook her hand. My name is Pyrrha Nikos. Rouge interrupted before pointing to each of the students, saying their names. RWBY Rose, Lai Ren, Jaune Arc, Yang Xiaolong, Blake Belladonna, Nora Valkyrie, and the cute little heiress Weiss Schnee. Yes. Weiss didn't particularly like how she was addressed. Sonic told you about us? Blake asked. Yeah, but I also found out from these. Rouge flashed her hands to show each of their student ID cards in between her fingers. Wait, what? Jaune felt along his pockets, with the others doing the same. You stole our IDs. Swiped them while you were all gawking at Omega. Rouge smirked as she flicked each of the IDs to their respective owners. You kids make it too easy. Listen you. Weiss walked up to Rouge and pointed her finger at her. I could report you for what? A little tease. Rouge maintained her smirk before producing Myrtanaster in her hand. Then I better give this back, huh? Wah. How did? Weiss gasped as she looked at her sides, knowing that she just had her rapier on her, only to scowl as she swiped it back. Nice earrings too, by the way. Rouge opened her left hand to show Weiss, earrings, and her right hand to reveal the tiara. Even got a little princess tiara. You. Weiss stuttered before comically scowling as she swiped her earrings and tiara back from the smirking Rouge. Is this some kind of joke for you? It is when I get a cute little reaction like that. Rouge said. So you better make sure you left your most precious valuable at home, princess. Otherwise they might be gone by the end of the day. Weiss, face turned more red than a tomato, while Jaune and Nora, even RWBY, stifled their laughter as Weiss looked like she was about to rant up a storm, but Knuckles put a firm hand on her shoulder. Don't rise to it. Trust me, it'll only encourage her. Aw Knuckles, don't pretend we didn't have fun back in the day. Rouge continued to tease. You mean you stealing the most powerful gemstone in our world and the last remnant of my people, only for it to break apart and Eggman to get his hands on them? Knuckles questioned irritably. I told you, I was spying on Eggman back then. I did what I did so I can get in close to him. Rouge replied. How many times do I have to say I'm sorry? As many times as, you've tried to steal the Master Emerald afterwards. Knuckles shot back. As the two groups began to mingle more and get to know one another, RWBY leaned in close to Sonic. You've got pretty weird friends. Like you're one to talk. Sonic cracked back. Are you calling me weird? RWBY exclaimed in a comic pout. Yep. Sonic smirked. But that's totally a compliment. As usual, Ozpin continued to sit in his office alone. He picked up his mug and drank his coffee, but as he set it down, he saw Shadow standing before his desk with crossed arms and a scowl that seemed permanently attached to his face. Ozpin made a mental note of how good he was. He didn't even hear him enter. He was fast and quiet, very impressive. I'm assuming you are Shadow the Hedgehog, correct? And you are Professor Ozpin, headmaster of Beacon Academy, one of the 4 main huntsman schools of Remnant. Then I trust Sonic has informed you of the situation? Ozpin asked. He has, but it's not enough. Shadow said. I need more information. What information exactly do you need? Ozpin asked. All of it, Shadow replied. Information on these kingdoms and their history, the Faunus, the Grimm, the academies, dust, data on the planet itself, all of it. While I am happy to share information with you on much of that, there is some information on the academies that can be considered classified, and I cannot so easily share that on a whim. Ozpin said. What you are able to offer should suffice, I can figure it all out on my own. Shadow responded. Very well then. Ozpin seemed to accept as he took out a data drive and imputed it into his computer to download all the information he had already shared with Sonic and his team. Have the rest of your comrades arrive? Ozpin asked as the download continued. Then have. Shadow confirmed with a single nod. Then your entire party is currently at Beacon. Ozpin said. Though I am sure Sonic has told you this, you and your friends are welcome to use this academy as a home base in your conflict against Dr. Eggman. My colleagues and I, including the other 3 headmasters, have already agreed to work alongside you when the time comes. Shadow gave only a nod in response just as the download finished. Ozpin removed the drive and handed it to Shadow, who promptly took it and proceeded to leave. Is there anything else that you may require? Ozpin asked. Nothing else yet, Shadow replied as he walked out onto the balcony. If there is anything else in the future, I will say so. He then vanished in a flash of light. From that brief interaction, Ozpin could get a general idea of Shadow's character. He seemed straightforward and to the point, preferring not to waste any time, pretty much the exact opposite of Sonic. On the positive side, all of Sonic's companions were united under a single roof and they all agreed to take a stand against Eggman together. Many of them had already began to forge meaningful bonds with some of the students, RWBY and JNPR in particular. On the negative side, however, all they can do now at this point was wait for Eggman to make his move, as well as another certain player that would do whatever she could to turn this situation to her advantage. It looks like things are shaping up to be an interesting year. The old professor muttered to himself. And this at the end of part 2 this what if, hope you guys like it. Do not forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.